Hole for Jonathan Taylor. There he goes again. 50, 40, down the far sideline. He might do it again. 10, 5, touchdown. I-N-D-Y.
Eastern Conference Championship has been captured by the Indiana Pacers.
Alex Pillow wins the 109th Indianapolis 500.
This is the Fan Morning Show with KB, JB, and Jeff.
Good morning. The trio back together again as we get ready for a big day for the Indianapolis Colts. We'll find out who their initial 53-man roster is going to be about 4 p.m. today. At least all those cuts are due by then, along with James Boyd and Kevin Bowen. I'm Jeff Rickard, Mark Dykton. Studio a little bit warm today, and the clothes are already flying off for Kevin Bowen today. I'm a little worried about what it's going to be like at the very end of the show. How you doing this morning? You hanging in there?
Welcome back. Great to have you back. It was hot, very hot yesterday, sauna-like. So, yes, I put an extra layer on this morning for the walk to the car, but knew full well once we got in this studio, it was not needed whatsoever.
I like the Hinkle Fieldhouse T-shirt today. I haven't seen that one. That's a cool one. I like that one there.
Year for Thad Mott and the Dogs.
Indiana Basketball Cathedral right there. James Boyd, it is a very busy day for the Indianapolis Colts, but last night they made a little bit of a roster addition in the secondary, didn't they?
They did. They made a trade for, I believe I'm saying his name right, Mekhi Blackman, the cornerback from Minnesota, give up a 6th-round pick for him. Blackman missed all of last year with the torn ACL, but he is a 3rd-round pick from a couple seasons ago. So what does that mean for the rest of the cornerback room is the bigger question after a move like that.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how the whole roster comes together a little bit later on tonight. But suddenly, where they had some injuries and things, a week and a half ago, all of a sudden the Colts are flush with cornerbacks right now.
I don't think I've ever seen it in the Chris Ballard era. Any position group get so much infusion in an offseason. And it's not like they rebuilt the room. The room still has the top guys back from last year. Kenny Moore, Jalen Jones, if you want to call Chris Lamont, Samuel Womack, those guys from last season. But, yeah, I mean, they have – now there are some obviously – not all of this is crystal clear. Justin Wally, for example, is a 3rd-round pick that tore his ACL, unfortunately, as James mentioned. Mekhi Blackman, I really want to say Mekhi Becton, not Mekhi Blackman.
Yeah, exactly.
Mekhi Blackman, like James pointed out, tore his ACL on the first day of training camp last year, so he missed all of last season. But, yeah, 2 former All-Pros in Travarius Ward and Xavier Howard. So I cannot recall a time really in the Ballard era where I have seen one position group just get so, again, infusion, not like retooling at all. There are a lot of names at corner. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens when 4 o'clock rolls around and how exactly it plays out.
That brings up a question from our first texter this morning. Does this mean Juju Brents is going to get cut, James Boyd? We just have to wait and see how it all plays out.
Yeah, we just got to wait and see how it all plays out. It's kind of like, this morning we were coming in. We weren't sure if our boss was going to be on the show, and then we showed up, and I was like, you know what? There he is, 53-man roster. Our 4-man roster is back together. A bit of a joke there. We have a group text that we heard nothing from you, Jeff, until I walked in today. And I was like, oh, he's here. So
well, if you don't hear anything from me, it means everything's okay. Right?
That's usually never what that means, but yes.
No news is good news, right?
That's how I've always thought about it. No news is good
news.
I'll take that. Where are you at on that, Mark? Are you a no news is good news guy?
Well, when the news is, hey, are we planning for the show tomorrow and we don't hear anything, it's like,
is he
good? Is he all right? So
I said I'd be back Tuesday.
Confirmation is always good, right?
All right. Well, I'll start sending proof of life from now on.
Hey, you know me and my proof of life tweets. You know I love them.
I know. We're good with that.
Shout out to listener.
Selfie in front of Cracker Barrel. That's what I want.
Shout out to listener John here. He goes, moving homes this morning. The show is the only thing that's going to make this bearable. Much appreciated, good sirs. John, I can think of far worse late August days to move homes. So, honestly, weather-wise, John, you got it going for you. So, we'll have you covered here for the next 3 hours.
I was going to say,
safe travel.
You guys got any tips? I know you've done it before, I believe, Kevin. I know, Jeff, maybe you've done it before? Moving homes, moving locations?
A few times, yeah.
I can't think it's a top 10 worst day you can have.
Hire movers.
Oh, it's that bad?
Hire movers. Don't think you're doing it yourself. Yeah. Just pay the money.
Have you looked?
Be nice
how much
to your
it costs to hire
other,
movers these
pray
days?
for icy
I don't
hot,
care.
ibuprofen. Yeah, moving sucks.
You want to try to be lifting up like futons and couches and all? No.
Oh, I agree.
This goes
I
here,
agree with
that
the
goes
movers.
there. Are you sure that goes there? I thought it went there.
Take the financial
so Mark
hit.
is saying you pay with money or you pay with your back?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's usually how it works. I am now in the camp of hire people, but I am also, my eyebrows get raised every time that I go, oh my gosh, that's how much it costs these days.
Think of the back, Jeff.
I know. So anyway, we're waiting on cuts later on today. Are there any potential big surprises? Like, as you're rolling this over in your head the last 24 hours, Kevin, is there anything that goes, man, that would be interesting?
Well, Juju Brents, would definitely be that. That's a question that we have asked ourselves now here ever since really Friday when, he played in that preseason game. I still don't think he is going to be cut, but, as James and I talked about yesterday, there is a little bit of a morsel or two of evidence where I might feel like an idiot come 4:01 today if indeed he shows up on the other side of it. But again, I don't think you're there just yet. I kind of look at the Blackman thing, and, I had kept Chris Lamons, for example, on the 53-man roster. You could probably play the practice squad elevation game with him a little bit there, and he would take his spot. So, yeah, I'd probably go there, but outside of that, barring another trade, I don't think anything too surprising. Jelani Woods, I know, is a popular name that, people like to bring up, and it's the final year of his rookie contract, and how does that play out at tight end? But I still think you've got 4 tight ends above him on the roster. So, I nothing too crazy for me.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how it all breaks out a little bit later on today, and we'll be watching. Here's the other thing, James. We'll be watching the cut names all over the league, and just as we've learned over the years, just because you have a 53-man roster at 4 o'clock this afternoon doesn't mean it's what it's going to look like tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.
Absolutely, which is so crazy because we all break this stuff down so detail-wise, and then it doesn't matter. It's almost like you turn the test, and then it's like, wait a second, well, there's some different answers here. So we'll see if the Colts make any waiver claims. I'm sorry, misspoke there. But, yeah, that is certainly a factor, Jeff, as far as how things shake out, because what we see, again, in a few hours is never going to be what it's supposed to be. And honestly, it changes, I would even venture to say, a few times after today as well. So there's going to be some movement there. But still, some of the bigger names, if a Jelani Woods, for example, doesn't make the cut, is he a waiver claim guy for somebody else? Something to keep in mind.
Yeah, and we're all getting ready for final rosters. We probably really won't know everybody in the league's final roster until probably Monday of next week, right, when the teams really start to prepare for week 1, and there's probably going to be a little bit of movement. We saw a big movement locally, and we'll have more details coming up in the update in a moment here. But Trey Hendrickson and the Bengals finally got back together for at least another year.
Yeah, and, again, this fell in the category of continue to be asked about it. Hey, should the Colts be involved? You're frozen right now as a franchise. Now, last night,
here's my pushback, though. If you're saying you got to win this year, why don't just go get them?
Well, that's where if I'm Carly Ursay, Gordon, I am.
If you believe in yourself this much, you believe in Daniel Jones, go get a guy that's going to help you make the playoffs.
Yeah, there's levels of belief. And,
fair enough.
And there are not all the chips being pushed into the middle of the table. 6th-round pick for Mekhi Blackman, I guess, but anything much higher than that from a draft pick standpoint, you couldn't have there. So, yeah, Trey Hendrickson, Terry McLaurin, we saw that as well yesterday. So it seems like Micah Parsons is the one to keep
So that's what you're saying the Colts to trade for. Okay.
It feels like there's genuine animosity now between Jera and Micah at this point in time. It just feels like they are really angry with each other.
Yeah, you know what? Like I said, I watched Landman. There's an appearance from Jerry Jones in there, and he was a much nicer person, I think, in that show than as he's coming off right now as the owner. But honestly,
I don't have patience to jack with you today.
Great job, Mark. But honestly, looking at the contracts and reading through some of this stuff a few years ago when JT was going through his issues with Jim Irsay, it is hard for a player to gain any leverage. Now, obviously, for an owner, you probably want an owner to act better, but he still has full control over his contract and his future right now.
I don't know about the rest of you guys, but this Cowboys documentary that's out right now, I can't think of anything I'm less interested than finding out more about Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys. I just don't care about it.
Get your damn act together.
Yeah.
I was talking to a couple people, and they spoke highly of it.
I'm sure it's a fine production. I just don't care about the Dallas Cowboys.
Is it about the golden era?
I think it's a little bit into Jerry. Why is Jerry? I guess is probably to put it
Oh,
simply.
that is quite a question that will take some episodes to answer.
8 episodes, apparently. I don't know if I have the
Which
patience
again,
or stamina.
we talk about, Jerry in a similar light to a guy like Jim Irsay. If someone pulled out a documentary of Jim Irsay for 8 episodes, I would probably
Jim Irsay was at least a decent human being.
dive deep into that.
He had his demons, but he was a good, basically, man.
I don't
Jerry's
know.
just.
I don't know.
I don't want any more Jerry Jones.
I don't
in
know
my
the
life.
philanthropic nature of Jerry Jones. Mark, did I miss something here? A tweet here from Mike Wells saying, "I'm personally inviting you, Kevin, out here to Brownsburg when your Cathedral squad plays Friday. Bring the little Bowens so they can check out their future school."
Look at that.
And future indoor golf hitting bays.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they got a ton of money to redo some stuff recently. I think me and you were talking about this, Mark.
At the high school, Mark?
They built a second football field just for blanks and giggles, apparently.
that's-
'Cause I'm like,
and
I don't know.
honestly,
Is this the IMG Academy over there on the
No,
west
the
side?
indoor golf facility is going to be
Man.
named the Mark Dykton Indoor Golf Facility because it's a generous
So
donation.
this is not like a separate, like, brick and mortar somewhere.
No.
This is on the high school.
They've got a
campus?
second football
Man.
field that they built with stands and everything, and then they have, which I don't know if it's practice field, I don't know if it's JV, I don't know what's going on. Then they got construction. They've got like a $10 million project going on over there. There's construction all
$5
summer
million
long.
of which
getting
Mark
stuff
gave.
done.
Yeah.
We
Whoa.
gotta get to the western suburbs ASAP here.
It looks
Bowen
immaculate.
family. Can we move in with you guys, Mark?
Sure. Got to keep your clothes on a little more than you do in the studio, though.
I'm sure you'd love to throw one more baby into
Hey.
the mix, right?
His clothes and texts to his wife. That's what you guys got going on right now.
That's right.
All right.
And now that I think about it, Mark would probably love that after he sent Maddie those texts.
Oh my God. He makes it like such a scumbag. This is not how this went.
Have you ever known anything
Thank
on
you,
this
James.
show?
Jeff
my
brings up
gosh.
Jerry Jones.
Yeah.
I might bring up Mark Dykton. into that,
Have you
though.
ever known anything, James, on this show to be brought up
Hey,
in a personal nature
look.
in real context?
You know what?
No.
You know, I don't know if I should be defending Mark because you have used our audio against us. So maybe you got to be out on your own on this one, brother.
And he
Settle
will
down
again
just a little
today.
bit.
And he will again today, as a matter of
Oh
fact.
my goodness.
You know how that goes.
The day
All
that
right.
ends in Y.
We got a big show coming up for you a little bit later on today. We'll tell you all about it in just a minute. We've got the check down coming momentarily. Cut down day for everyone in the National Football League. Rosters due by 4 p.m. We'll tell you all about it next as we continue at 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Down on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome into Tuesday, cutdown day in the National Football League. Everybody has to get down to 53 men by 4 p.m. Eastern this afternoon. The Colts made a move last night by picking up safety Mekhi Blackman from the Minnesota Vikings for a 2026 sixth-round pick. He going to be able to play? He was coming off an injury last year. What's the thinking there? Are they just looking for numbers?
Yeah, I mean, played in the preseason, so I assume he is healthy and good to go, and I don't see why you would make this trade if you didn't think he'd at least be on your 53-man roster. Where exactly he fits into the pecking order, we'll see. I mean, James, I tend to think they've got their top three corners, and it's probably the oldest cornerback room in the entire NFL. In Charvarius Ward, Kenny Moore, and Xavier Howard. And then depth after that. We'll see, but yeah, looks like Blackman. You don't make the trade unless you put him on the 53-man roster.
So you think Xavier Howard is the third cornerback?
So pretty much every starting rep when we were out there last week.
Fair.
Okay,
That's fair.
He doesn't strike me as a dude that comes back to pass out water to his teammates, and I don't think Lou Anarumo gave that impression either. Trust me, I get why you would have a little bit of doubt, but none of their actions last week spoke to Xavier Howard.
Fair enough.
Just all of a sudden scratching dudes' backs.
All right. Do we feel like there are any surprises coming, JB, this afternoon?
Just keep an eye on Juju Brents. I think we talked about that earlier in the show already, but he's somebody who I still feel confident to make the team. But, hey, you bring another cornerback in, that's always going to be a conversation. I think Sammy Womack maybe isn't a surprise potential cut, but he's somebody else to keep an eye on as well.
All right, we'll turn to the WNBA. Back at the Fieldhouse tonight for the Seattle Storm taking on the Indiana Fever. Caitlin Clark not expected to play. She's been out since July 15th. But yesterday, Kevin Bowen, Nike announced that she is the newest signature athlete for their brand, gets her own logo, eventually going to have her own shoe. She continues to light up the sky as a star even without playing right now.
Yeah, I did see that. What would you call that? My artistic work is horrific. What would you call it? Like a interlocking C's there?
Yeah, with a little smaller C in the middle.
So you're not a fan of the
logo?
logo?
Have to look right. It didn't.
No. I just know nothing. I mean, the logo looks like old Oakland Golf Club's logo up there in Geist. But yeah, it looks fine. I mean, sure.
Yeah.
I'm all for. Every time I hear her with Nike, I have to laugh. When we had her on the show last year, we were very grateful to have her on the show. We were sandwiched in between a meeting where she recorded a video to accept an ESPY before us, and then after us, she had a meeting with 20 people from Nike's corporate headquarters that had flown in. So I'm thinking,
you know what I was thinking though?
She had us around the ESPYs and maybe like the first renderings of this logo.
Yeah. So when they announced that she's a signature athlete officially, I was thinking, one, why didn't this happen like immediately? I was kind of confused at first. I was like, isn't this already a thing? And number two, I thought it was her sneaker release, not just the logo. So hit me again when the sneakers are out.
That's a pretty big deal though. If you're
I do like her
athlete,
sneakers
that means a lot of residual for her down the road is what I think it means.
Absolutely.
Man.
I just thought it had happened already, honestly.
Yeah. I'm okay with the logo. It just seemed a little busy to me, but like you, I don't know these things. So we'll see how it all works out. But congratulations to her. The Fever tonight, they will be at the Fieldhouse. You can hear the game live here at 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Pregame show, the Fan pregame show with Eddie Garrison comes your way at 6:45. Other news in the National Football League yesterday, just down the road, Trey Hendrickson and the Bengals come to an agreement on a one-year deal. He'll be making $30 million a year this year. That's an extra $14 million from what he was slated to make, but then he becomes flat out an unrestricted free agent, Kevin, at the end of the season. So this could be a short-lived deal for Cincinnati.
Deadlines spur action, and you're seeing that. Terry McLaurin yesterday with, 3 years, close to $100 million. So shout out to Buddy Baker for getting that done there. And then, yes, Trey Hendrickson with quite the significant pay raise here on a one-year deal. So Micah Parsons, am I missing anybody else? Is that the big one?
I think those are the big ones. We're waiting on what happens with him.
Yeah, I don't know if I can stage a hold-in at the Athletic and stay employed, so I'll be happy with my salary. I will say, I saw people saying that the Trey Hendrickson deal, oh man, he caved, he blinked. He blinked for another $16 million or $14 million. Like, that is, in my opinion, not the average blink.
Blink 3 times for that.
Exactly. I was thinking, well, if that's me compromising, I would call that a win in my book.
But again, I think the big thing for him is he becomes an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year, so he can do whatever he wants at that point.
They could still tag him, but like you said, Jeff, if they tagged him, the money would be crazy on the tag. So, yeah, this is probably him getting a nice raise and also his freedom at the end of the year.
Major League Baseball yesterday. Mark's Cubs were off, but the Los Angeles Dodgers had a day with the Cincinnati Reds. 7-0 for our team, Kevin Bowen. It did not go well. They just couldn't get the bats going. The other day, though, did you see that highlight of Ellie De La Cruz, again, just effortlessly scoring from first base on what should have been a single?
Boy, when you've lost 4 of 5, I don't know if I can be mesmerized by Ellie right now.
I can.
Mark, you might just need the audio at some point. Tristan Thompson audio might just apply to the Reds here pretty soon.
Oh, boy.
Very rare where I tell Mark Dykton to, get some audio ready to absolutely rip my Reds, but at this point, we might be in the backyard.
Kind of sound like Mark did.
You sound really sad already.
You okay?
They've lost 4 of 5. Jeff is talking about a dude running the bases as the Reds have lost 4 of 5.
Well, he loves Ellie.
Well, it was fun while it lasted.
I'm a little nervous on the old Ellie audio. Let's not go there again.
Cardinals beat the Pirates 7-6. The White Sox shut out the Royals 7-0. And got to mention this one because this guy is just amazing. Cal Raleigh hit his 50th home run of the season last year. He's a catcher for the Seattle Mariners. They beat the Padres 9-6. He joins Mickey Mantle as the only switch hitters to ever hit 50 or more home runs in a Major League Baseball season. This guy, Mark, you follow baseball, he's just doing historical things from the catcher position. It's amazing.
Yeah, the fact that he's a catcher doing all this stuff is kind of insane because the catcher is like the quarterback of the baseball field. And the fact he's first of all, I could never be a catcher. Just being squatted down for hours at a time, no thank you. And then hitting dinger after dinger after that. I mean, he's doing an incredible thing.
Yeah, his stats are absurd. I'm looking at him right now. 120 hits, 107 RBIs.
It's insane
balling
right now. The Indianapolis Indians off yesterday. They'll be at home, Victory Field tonight, taking on the Buffalo Bisons at 6:35. Keep an eye on that one. We get ready for college football later on this week. Kevin, I know you're already pacing the floors, ready for Notre Dame's opening salvo at Miami coming up on the 31st. Looking forward to that, and I know
I can't bleep and wait.
I know you're ready to go. Butler is going to play at Northern Iowa. Of course, Purdue hosting Ball State. Indiana starts their preseason schedule with Old Dominion. And then that's what's happening in college football around here. Looking forward to it. Anything else you guys want to throw in?
Yeah, we mentioned this yesterday, James, but the Pacers did indeed bump up Jim Boylan to the front of the bench there with that staff. I guess addition, and Johnny Carpenter was the new name there. He's got some history at UVA. Of course, Rick Carlisle, plenty of ties there, and also ties with Rick, I think a year at Dallas and with the Pacers in a training camp a few years ago, but spent a lot of time with Tony Bennett at UVA, former manager, which obviously we've seen that route.
I believe he might have coached Jay Huff as well.
Yes, some background there with Jay Huff. So he will be behind the bench, and then Jim Boylan, who, of course, has coached in the NBA, he will be up there with Jenny Busek and Lloyd Pierce. So with Mike Weiner's news that happened on Friday, that will be the assistant route for Rick Carlisle here coming up this season.
All right, looking forward already to a Pacer season. I know that the hopes are not high given everything that happened and Tyrese being out and Miles being gone. I still think this is a really fun group to watch, and I can't wait to see him overperform people's expectations.
That's kind of become the theme, Jeff, over the last few years for this team. So if you're looking at a team in the market right now to believe in, it's that one.
All right. Take a quick time out. We'll talk more about NFL Cutdown Day and the Colts and some of the things that they may have ahead of them. Also, I haven't had a chance to talk to you about a terrific piece you wrote about Anthony Richardson and the Colts and how it all went sideways. We'll do that as we continue next. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Is that Britney Spears?
Hell yeah, it is.
Mark said that like it's a national anthem. Like everyone should
This
know
song
this.
gets
Yes,
it
it
done.
is.
Teenage Mark Dykton loved Britney Spears.
I think Mark just
adult Mark
wanted
Dykton
to see
still
the
loves
music
Britney
video
Spears.
again.
Oh my God, best video of all time.
I mean, when she was at the peak of her game, yeah.
A long time ago, a buddy of mine who was a salesperson was supposed to host a suite at a Britney Spears concert, and he got sick, and so I had to go fill in. I've never felt more. I was surrounded by like 12-year-old girls around the entire place. I was just like, oh my God, I just want to go home and get out of here.
I would have stayed for the show.
Yo,
Exited the suite and gone
had
elsewhere.
to. But I just remember thinking, this is the one place on planet Earth I do not belong right now.
So speak for yourself.
Yeah. Banger after banger right there.
I don't mind Britney Spears. I just, it was just not my scene. That's all I'm saying. In the meantime, the scene over at West 56th will be busy a little bit later on this afternoon. It's always tough, I know, for coaches and staff. You bring in a bunch of guys who've put out their blood, sweat, and tears for the last month. Some of them all the way back to all the workouts, the OTAs, and things like that. I know it's never easy. Those conversations are probably never fun. And, you hopefully a few of these guys might catch on somewhere else before it's all said and done. But for a lot of guys, it's a tough day. A dream can go to die today, and that's never fun.
Sure, yeah. I mean, you're going to cut, 1,100 north of that around the NFL. Obviously, 16? Is it 16 or 17? I forget. Practice squad spots. That is a big, big number. And as we've talked about for the last week, you can make damn good money on the old practice squad. So that is definitely something the NFL has tried to increase really ever since the COVID season, and they've maintained that here. But yeah, definitely, you see it played out on Hard Knocks a whole lot. Yeah. Never easy to get the call. A lot of these guys are telling their families, you don't call me whatsoever today. I will call you because I do not want that call. And unfortunately for guys 52, 53, you might celebrate a little bit tonight, and then bam, all of a sudden the waiver claim goes through tomorrow by noon, and you're off the roster. So that's always something that there is some tinkering with the back end of that roster here for the next handful of days.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome into the Fan Morning Show. If you're just joining us on the way to work or getting ready for the day, whatever it happens to be, we appreciate you being here. Along with James Boyd, Kevin Bowen, I'm Jeff Rickard, Mark Dykton. And yeah, it is cut down day around the NFL. But late last night, if you're just joining us, the Colts did bolster again their cornerback room. They will certainly, James, have a lot to choose from before it's all said and done. Just in terms of week to week, who's going to be suiting up for these guys?
Yeah, I think Kevin laid it out earlier in the show already, but the top three cornerbacks appear to be Javarius Ward and Kenny Moore, which are obvious picks on those two out of the three, and the third one being Xavier Howard, the former two-time All-Pro, but he hasn't played since 2023. However, he's getting first-team reps, basically his first day here. So those are the top three, and then they traded for Mekhi Blackmon of the Minnesota Vikings, a 2023 third-round pick. Missed all of last year due to a torn ACL that he suffered, I believe, throughout the offseason. And so he's got something to prove. The Colts feel they want to take a gamble on him. And looking at his background, Kevin, I wonder if he slots in more as like a backup slot guy behind Kenny Moore in like that nickel position, which in English terms for those listening basically means like the cornerback who isn't on the outside, the shorter cornerback. Kenny Moore is more like the tweener cornerback. And so could he be a backup to Kenny Moore, or he has some experience on the outside? Could he challenge for an outside spot? So a lot of questions to be had, and hopefully we get some answers here in a few hours.
Yeah, when I saw the trade, I thought, yes, I would agree with you, James. That was my first inkling, and then I was curious, too, how much special teams background does he have? And he really doesn't have any in the NFL. I think he played 2 special team snaps his entire rookie year, and given his height, 5'11", yeah, I thought a little bit more of the slot background, but it actually sounds like he is more of an outside corner. Now, we'll see. Maybe the Colts think he can play inside a little bit. Nothing like a nice little Chris Ballard, Ryan Grigson trade that we got last night there. But, yeah, I mean, I'll go back to kind of what I said to lead off the show. I cannot recall a position group in the history of Chris Ballard's 9 years as GM of the Colts that has gotten this much attention in one offseason. And, again, it's not like you lost anybody of note from last year. You bring back your top 4 snap guys from last season. So former All-Pro and Travarius Ward, former All-Pro and Xavier Howard. Again, the third-round pick of Justin Wally, unfortunately tore his ACL, and now the third-round pick in Mekhi Blackmon, who you trade a sixth-rounder for. I mean, that is a lot of new investment, new resources into a cornerback room. So somewhere Gus Bradley is raising his hand in the back of the room saying, "Did you forget about me when I was the GM?"
Yeah, he never got this much help. I know we can criticize him, but yes, I agree.
Like it's unbelievable how much. And again, I say all of this just to say, man, Louis Anarumo, he's got a loud voice in this personnel. Like Xavier Howard is. I mean, the Colts might trot out 2 starters in Week 1 purely because Louis Anarumo believes they should be here. Xavier Howard and Joe Bacci. Like that is. I mean that. And I'm fine with that. Let me be clear on that.
I think Bocce's had a good camp, hasn't he?
Right, and I think you should cater to the coordinator that you have. Certainly there, but
first year here, man, they are certainly bringing out some bucks. And
but
some
if you're going to take a 180
him.
systematically, then
I respect it.
And so I guess I bring all that up to say, what does that mean for the in-house guys that weren't drafted by him? What does that mean for the in-house players that did not join this team in the last handful of months? Jalen Carlies and Juju Brents and, Kwity Paye up front. And again, not all these guys are in jeopardy of missing the team or anything like that, but just as you start
roles, yeah.
As you start to, define roles, years go on, assuming that this regime sticks together, those will all be things to keep an eye on.
The other thing, some good news. We've seen Josh Downs and Nick Cross moving pretty well at practice, and I think maybe does that indicate they're going to be ready to go Week 1?
We have not seen them moving at practice.
Well, I saw a report where they were running.
Yeah, Shane Steichen was saying that he's hopeful they'll be back and getting out back in action pretty soon. So I believe the last time we were at practice, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, we hadn't seen them in action.
I have not. No,
the same
but
way
it sounds like next
at the
week.
game. But just to clarify there, it is a positive sign there, Jeff, because you want to get those guys healthy for your season opener, mainly because Josh Downs led your team in catches last year, and Nick Cross tied for the team high in interceptions last year. So 2 big key pieces, and also some young players you're hoping to see another step forward from.
Yeah, so we keep an eye on West 56th all day long to see if names start trickling out throughout the days. Does happen in some places, but the Colts are usually pretty good about keeping things close to their vest. They don't leak a lot over there, do they, Kevin?
No, I mean they're pretty steel trappy when it comes to anything along those lines, and typically they've operated in a team that announces these roster cuts about as late as anybody around the league, and we've seen this already with. I don't know, James, it seems like a good amount of teams have already announced 5, 10, 15 cuts. Like they've got ahead of a little bit of this. The Colts have not announced anything from a, outright cut standpoint.
I will say, shout out to Joel A. Erickson, though, of Indy Star. This is his wheelhouse. Among other things, I don't want to diminish him to just that, but he is usually all over these signings, whether it's right after the draft, when they're getting all these undrafted guys, to right now announcing a few of those. So if you do want to keep up with what's going on and kind of have like that minute-by-minute update, he's somebody that's good to follow on social media and also to subscribe and watch his work, read his work over at IndyStar.com.
You get nothing official from the team.
I'm just saying I do trust Joel. Though.
But yes,
he's
Joel
on it.
Definitely is always on it.
We'll keep an eye on that. Of course, on over the weekend, the Colts won the battle of the second and third teamers over in Cincinnati.
Beat down.
Anybody there that maybe made their way onto the 53-man roster or at least solidified themselves as a practice squad player?
One debate we had yesterday, which I think we got a little clarity on, James, was wide receiver. You saw in that game Laquan Treadwell and Coleman Owen, 2 very different backgrounds. Both were outstanding in that game, and I think both are guys the Colts really like. And so a question that I did have is, I didn't think wide receiver had much debate. I think it was a pretty clear 6 throughout the offseason. Michael Pittman Jr., Alec Pierce, Josh Downs, A.D. Mitchell, and then your other 2. I look at Anthony Gould and Doolin. Those are your kick returners. But we did see Ashton Doolin get hurt in practice last week. Shane Steichen clarified yesterday just a concussion for Doolin, so something where they expect him to be back very soon. Because my thought was, all right, if Doolin has more of a serious injury, do you then get into debate of Treadwell versus Owen, which, I mean, that is an undrafted free agent in Owen versus Treadwell, a former first-round pick who's 30 years old. They're different wideouts. Owen more of a slot, Treadwell more of an outside guy. Treadwell actually has played a decent amount of special teams in his NFL career, but right now I would look at both of those guys as practice squad players. There was a little bit of me that thought, could Owen compete with Anthony Gould, but I don't think I'm quite there just yet from a punt return, kick return, backup slot to Josh Downs standpoint.
Yeah, and I know it was the battle of the second and third teamers, but man, it was fun to watch the Colts just rack up some points on somebody at some point, wasn't it?
Yeah, we were looking up because to give you all some context, my last story every preseason is that 53-man roster projection at the buzzer of the game. And so, yes, I am watching the game, but not as intently as I usually am. So every time I would see the horn go off or I would see them kind of getting in the red zone, I'm like, man, these guys are putting up some points. And so there was certainly good vibes in the locker room afterwards. I think you heard from Riley Leonard how much it meant to him to throw his first touchdown pass in the NFL. I had some haters on social media telling me it didn't count. Yes, it does count because I saw it with my own eyes. And so that was a cool moment for him. Gave that touchdown ball, rather, to his father for his birthday, which just happened to be Saturday's game. So it was cool, and I enjoyed that locker room afterwards. It's always good after a win. And then one quick shout-out, Daniel Scott. Been through a lot of injury stuff. Had missed a year because of an Achilles, missed another year because of an ACL. Comes back, he's healthy. He's a lock to make the roster for me, Kevin, initially, and he gets a pick 6 against the Cincinnati Bengals and kind of has a triumphant return moment to the league.
Yeah, and for me, I look at Scott as potentially that third safety and, a guy that's going to play a key special teams role for you. Can I throw a hypothetical at you?
Of course.
Better chance Anthony Richardson is traded today, or Curt Cignetti's Hoosiers make the Final Four of the college football playoffs?
Better chance that Anthony Richardson is traded today.
I'm rolling with IU.
You think so?
Yeah, in this situation, yeah, I would go with IU.
I think I'm hooing it up.
I don't think IU
I did see a
is
shirt.
getting to the Final Four this year.
By the way, when I was walking
the Flying
through,
Bison, baby.
I did see a shirt when I was walking through the airport, actually getting my rental car to go to Cincinnati, and the woman had on a Who's Your Mama shirt. I thought that was pretty funny. I hadn't seen that before.
Look, I like Curt Cignetti. I like what he's doing at Indiana. I like what they're going. I don't like their preseason schedule. I think that it's going to hurt them in a world where there are a lot of big-time preseason football games that really bolster other people's resumes.
Do y'all know how much Chris Ballard loves Anthony Richardson? He ain't going nowhere, okay? They love him.
I think
he is loved.
I love the question, but I think there's a small chance of either thing happening.
I'll take the Hoosiers just because you have a longer timeline to be wrong. You can be like, I can wait till December and I'll be wrong then. Well, listen to 24 hours today, I'd be wrong.
Listen to Curt Cignetti talk about Old Dominion yesterday. You would have thought they got the 72 Dolphins here in week 1.
Well, Mark, you were saying that the spread was closer in that game than you expected it to be.
What was it, Kevin? What were
we say 22 or 23 and a half?
I don't think it was I thought it would be bigger than that.
Yeah, I would.
That could be said about a lot.
I would agree. Yeah,
well, unfortunately, you used that game to get ready for Kennesaw State.
That's been said to me quite a few times in my life.
I will continue to pound on that schedule. It just drives me nuts. I get one to play a couple of cupcakes early, but throw somebody in there before conference.
Oh, you're not getting it for the next 5 years.
I know.
Did you see that futures deal?
I know. The other thing I want to talk about, I read it the other day. I thought it was a fantastic piece that you wrote about everybody being to blame for where Anthony Richardson sits at this moment in time. Certainly he takes the majority of the blame for all the things that we've documented and talked about. But every step of the way, the general manager, the coach, the quarterback coach seemed to have stepped left when they needed to go right in this situation.
Yeah, I feel like the only person we have on record saying that they are to blame, at least to some degree, is Chris Ballard. He is on the record saying, yeah, we shouldn't have started him. We shouldn't have played him. Now, if you want to put that out there, that's your business. Should you kept it to yourself, that's also your business. But at least he has fallen on the sword a bit. I think with Shane Steichen and Cam Turner to a degree as well, have not really answered for why the development process hasn't gone the way it's supposed to. And perhaps it's a question to ask Jim Bob Cooter as well. But for Shane, I had to kind of hammer it a couple times. Like, what could you have done, though? It took 3 questions to get a non-answer. And honestly, if I read it out loud on air like I did last week, it wouldn't change anything. None of it really made sense to me. And then for Cam Turner, you have him saying, well, we did everything we could. I did everything that I could. Anthony's worked hard. The consistency just isn't there. But I'm like, you're supposed to be the developmental guy. You're supposed to work with this guy day to day. Why hasn't there been enough progress going into his third year? I'm not saying it's all your fault or all his, but to, again, kind of just push it all back onto Anthony, I think is a bit disingenuous.
Yeah, maybe we play some audio here in a little bit. I know we got Jake Arthur to talk some roster cuts coming up at 8 o'clock. We'll begin our college football tour, if you will, around the state. We'll start in Bloomington with Zach Osterman in the 9 o'clock hour as IU gets ready for week 1 here in the second season of Kurt Cignetti. But, Shane yesterday asked about Anthony Richardson. Has there been any doubts from Anthony about his standing within the franchise? And you're judging like social media reaction is probably a dangerous game to play, James.
Yeah, it always is.
But I will say this. I can't recall, and obviously there has been iterations of this, but it's been a while, and why I bring this up. I can't recall the last time the Colts fan base was this fed up with their head coach.
Yeah.
To the extent fed up, you think?
Fed up.
Yeah.
Pissed. I don't know how
Jeff,
else.
I was going to say, if
Is
you've
it,
seen
is
these
it, but
responses.
it's beyond irritated. It's fed up, right?
Yeah.
No, they're
I mean,
angry.
I was going to say, James, go ahead and push back or agree or whatever.
Yeah,
but
only
that's
thing
the
is
reaction
it's
gotten.
social media. I will say that. Like, I haven't been out on the streets to,
But it's a big throng.
Yeah.
And even if talking to people, whatever, on the streets or in public, I think people are generally fed up with, and maybe it is the whole overarching thing of like, well, it's the fact that Ballard's got a 9th year, and it's the fact that Anthony Richardson apparently isn't going to work out. Maybe it's all of it. And now Shane just happens to be spokesperson. But I just think there is a general, you have used the phrase word salad a lot, and when Shane does speak, oftentimes you walk away from it being like, there was absolutely nothing of and I think it's largely intentional, to be clear.
It is.
And I think when you couple that with questionable play on the field, it's a recipe for the fan base to turn on you in a hurry. And sure, winning can cure a lot of it, but I think that's where you're at here on August 26th.
He's a football robot, so when he doesn't give any answers and it's all just like emotionless, like football jargon, you're not going to gain any sort of sympathy from the fan base. They're going to be like, okay, enough. Like, this is just nothing. You're giving us nothing. You're not showing us you're a human being. You're just reciting football jargon day in and day out, and we're sick of it.
And to Mark's point,
I think it's well said, by the way.
Yeah, that's a great point. Honestly, Mark has probably dealt with a lot of that with some of those former Bears coaches.
Matt Eberflus last season.
Mark is an expert in that field.
Yeah, I was going to say last year, in Chicago was certainly an example of that. And then to kind of piggyback off that point from Mark but you're saying nothing and haven't produced anything, so it's nothing for nothing. As we said throughout the break, I think I was talking to Mark, if Bill Belichick says whatever he says for however many years, people just kind of live with it because he won at such a high rate, it didn't matter. When you don't win and you also don't have an answer for why you haven't worked out, that is frustrating for a fan base. And I think it kind of gaslights them too, to a certain degree, because it's like, well, you're telling us stuff that we clearly can see isn't the case. And I think the biggest source of frustration, if I had to guess, and this isn't me like putting out some official poll, but just hearing some of the complaints in my mentions on my story, even my own personal belief, is that there is no plan beyond this season. The plan is Daniel Jones, but the plan that you told us and you sold us on was Anthony Richardson. And like when we are asking questions about what's next for him, there is no plan. If there was a plan in that answer that he gave you yesterday, Kevin, I would like to hear it, because it wasn't in that whatever many words that was, 75 words he gave. That was just, yeah, I got to answer something. Let's get off the Zoom call. But that, to me, is the money question going into tomorrow's press conference with Chris Ballard is, what is the plan? And then secondly, why should anyone believe it? Because the plans you all have had have not worked out.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on all of that, and it'll be interesting to see how it does play out. But you know what? You win those first 2 games and then go and get a divisional game against Jacksonville. Against the Titans in week 3, and people forget all the things we're talking about today. You know how that works.
Yeah, but again, like I just said, if you say nothing and you win, hey, more power to you, but you can't be the Colts, who are, in my opinion, no longer, not even an opinion, it's a fact, they're no longer the perennial playoff team, contender, upper quartile, the Colts that I kind of grew up with as a kid. This team that I've known throughout most of my adulthood now as a 29-year-old has been bad. Like, they have not been a good team. They've been irrelevant. They've been largely irrelevant. And so you can't sit up there and have these kind of, wordless, wordy answers and have not won anything. That's the biggest thing.
And again, I think it is largely intentional by Shane Steichen. I think he has always walked into a media climate not wanting to be super transparent.
Yeah.
James, think back to last year. It took him a while to finally offer transparency on Anthony Richardson's benching. Remember, it took about 2 weeks before he finally got that.
Oh, you mean to tell me when they put him back in the lineup and then he said, oh, by the way, yeah, here's the process. Oh, yeah. And
Remember,
secondly,
he had that long
he's our
opening
star.
statement?
Yeah, I mean.
And then later in the year,
Yeah, I
and
wouldn't
Stephen
mind that
Holder,
either.
I think, reported on this, the Richardson camp was really disappointed in the lack of clarity on Richardson's back injury. Shane talked about the back injury like, me hurting my back, tripping over one of my kids' toys.
Yeah.
Whereas Anthony's like, yeah, I had to crawl to the door the other day. Like, again, it's just I think it's largely intentional. I think it's rooted in, as crazy as this sounds to some people, competitive disadvantages, which, again, I know that isn't something that totally applies to the Richardson situation, but I do think that's where it largely comes from here. And when you aren't winning and you have had inconsistencies like you've had, it's going to boil over. But right now, I can't recall the last time there's been this much pent-up frustration. And again, fed up, apathy, pissed off, however you want to describe it. I think all of it applies right now to where the fan base is at.
Yeah, and, I always say this too. All that stuff from the outside, we're right to talk about because it's what we see, it's what we observe, it's what people say. Really, at the end of the day, it's what's going on between the Colts and their leadership group and Anthony Richardson and what is being communicated privately as to what we're thinking, how are you feeling, those kinds of things. We're not privy to that, but based on what we see from the outside, it sure looks like it's topsy-turvy, up and down, and anything can change at any moment.
Absolutely. Again, if we ask you what is the plan for the guy you drafted 4th overall 2 years ago and you can't give an answer, at least publicly, at least a glimpse of an answer, that is concerning to me.
All right.
Like this tweet here, Miklo, I've actually never been more tired of hearing someone speak more than I am of Shane. Like, that general thought, I bet I got 100 of those yesterday in regards to that specific video. So that's just the reality, I think, of where a lot of Colts fans are at right now.
Yeah. All right, coming up in a minute, Jake Arthur from Locked On Colts, SI.com. Get his thoughts on the Colts getting ready to make some cuts a little bit later on today, the state of the franchise in general. We'll do it next, and we'll start to take a look at some of your texts throughout the course of the morning as well. They're coming in fast and furious at 239-1070. It's all straight ahead at 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us wherever you may be. If you're up and dancing and the music is moving you like James Boyd, love to see it.
Yeah, that was a little Disturbia, I believe, from
Rihanna.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like I was at a club or rave or something.
I like that.
At
A little
8
more
o'clock
my
in the morning.
speed. Yeah. We got a lot going on today. We'll be talking about the Colts all morning long as they get ready for cutdown day. Cuts due to the NFL by 4 p.m. this afternoon. We've been talking about that for the last hour or so. And now we are joined by Jake Arthur, who covers the Colts at SI.com. Also, you can hear him on Locked On Colts, just about anywhere you can download your podcasts. And he is live with us right now on the Payless Liquors hotline. Good morning, Jake. You just going to be looking and reloading the internet all day long, just going to your favorite webpage and just hitting refresh?
That's how it goes on these days, doesn't it? I mean, it's especially when the deadlines are always in the afternoon. It's like you kind of just sit and wait and put out feelers all day.
So, Jake, when you look at guys who might be on the bubble, well, actually, let's start here. What are your thoughts on the Mekhi Blackmon trade and what that could mean for some guys in that cornerback room who may be on the bubble?
Yeah, I thought that one was interesting. This guy seems like he's kind of cut from that same Justin Wally, Samuel Womack cloth. But the whole group of corners is kind of in flux. You know, Juju Brinson, Jalen Jones just recently came back, but Jones isn't quite ready for field work. Womack, of course, had that hamstring last week. Looks like he was limping around a bit when we saw him at practice. So I think the writing on the wall is that at least one of these guys is expected to be out a little while when the season starts. But Blackmon, I don't think moves the needle like Xavier Howard does, for example. Like Howard already got penciled in as a starter on their depth chart. But Blackmon, you know, he's coming off an ACL last year and hasn't had the strongest summer for the Vikings. Was maybe a guy who, you know, maybe not even going to make the team or really kind of scratching and clawing for reps there. It feels very much like a Womack thing from last year. I'm guessing he's kind of insurance and maybe along the lines of like a third or fourth cornerback. But what I thought was really interesting with him is he's not really got a ton of special teams experience. So I was kind of curious about that, if that's their plan with him or if he's actually supposed to get playing time or what they're going to do there.
Jake Arthur, again, you can find his work, Locked On Colts, great listen, and SI from a written standpoint. One more on the corner front. You don't believe Juju Brents is a cut candidate, do you?
I don't know. You know, either of Samuel Womack or Juju Brents, they don't feel super safe. But if it was me, I'd probably be more inclined to go with Juju over Womack. The problem with Juju, obviously, he's been hurt throughout his first couple years, but when he's on the field, he's pretty good. And I think they've been trying to get him more reps on special teams to kind of bring even more value to the team when he's not out there on defense. I would say they would, if it's between the two, I would probably lean more into Juju Brent sticking around. Womack, you know, with the injury, and it felt like he was kind of battling for a spot to begin with. I mean, you guys were there. You saw the injuries at cornerback. They gave Jonathan Edwards serious snaps. They gave Alex Johnson serious snaps. Womack was not always a guy that they just immediately threw right in there to absorb those first team reps when other guys went down.
How about offensively? Pass catcher wasn't too difficult for me. Feel free to go down the Jelani Woods route if you want to. Running back, a little bit more of a question given the injuries to Tyler Goodson and Khalil Herbert. But what do you view offensively of stuff you're curious about with cuts?
Yeah, I think with Goodson and Herbert, it's certainly that's the big question, because I would think they'd only keep 3 running backs, but you don't know to what degree these guys are injured. Now, Herbert's already been out a couple weeks, so he, could be close to returning. When we talked to Shane yesterday, I couldn't get a great gauge on Goodson. Like, did you guys feel like he was maybe an early IR candidate? I mean, it sounded like he was expected to be back within the first, handful of weeks there in the regular season.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah.
So I did speak to Tyler Goodson. He told me he dislocated his left elbow, doesn't need surgery, and was hoping to get back early in the season. Now, I don't know if that means, he's an IR candidate or not, but he seemed
4 games is the cutoff.
Exactly, but yeah, he seemed optimistic that he could be out there within the first month of the season.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, if they wanted to play it cautious with him, they could certainly throw him on IR to begin and then have an extra roster spot there. But then with the pass catchers, yeah, I think we're all kind of in the same boat where we've got Warren, Mo Alley Cox, Ogletree, and Will Mallory, with Jelani Woods kind of being the guy on the outside looking in. I think he kind of accomplished everything he needed to this summer, but it just wasn't enough to surpass Will Mallory. And obviously Woods has been going with the 2s and 3s all summer. Mallory has been with the 1s and 2s. So you can kind of obviously tell what they want there. And he's played a lot in the preseason as well. If they could get him onto the practice squad, that'd be great. But seeing as he was healthy all summer and, made some plays, I've got to imagine another team will probably try and scoop him off waivers.
Jake, this is obviously a roster on defense that's being heavily influenced by the new defensive coordinator, Lou Anarumo. In that light, something we've talked about, how many linebackers do you see them even keeping on this roster?
Yeah, probably not many. Definitely fewer than a Gus Bradley defense, I would have imagined. And we've obviously kind of probed them about linebackers throughout the offseason, and they just have not really seemed all that concerned. I think I've got them with 5, Bocce, Franklin, Carlisle, McGrone, actually 4, I guess. Alubi is a guy that we obviously thought he was probably going to be competing for, a third linebacker spot going into the summer, but they haven't really been giving him all that much. They've been feeding really all that stuff to Bocce and McGrone and really Austin Najike. Carlisle has been banged up as well. We'll see how long he's out. But I don't think they're going to keep that many linebackers. There's probably almost never going to be more than 2 on the field at the same time. We've seen them be very willing to use 3 safeties on the field at once. It's kind of affected with Hunter Wohler being out for the year. You lose a little versatility there, but I still think they would be more apt to use an extra defensive back than they would be an extra linebacker.
So, Jake, I believe the last time I saw you, you were telling me you had some schedule conflicts and you might not be able to make Chris Ballard's press conference tomorrow. So now we have you on the show. If you had to ask him 1 or 2 questions in all seriousness, and I would imagine they will get asked to some degree from all of us in support of you and in support of each other, trying to get real answers, what would those questions be?
Yeah, I mean, I imagine he's going to spend the first 20, 30 minutes talking about the quarterback competition, right?
Yeah.
I'm just very curious about the validity of the quarterback competition because I thought, let's say you thought Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson was a wash going through training camp as far as how the competition went. Anthony, I thought, showed some growth. Now, there's obviously still some things he needs to improve on. It's not like he had an awesome summer, but it looked largely like he accomplished a lot of the things they wanted him to. And I don't know how much more he could have proved. So Daniel Jones getting the nod with, the reasoning mostly being that he's just got this big mental catalog of stuff that he's acquired over being a veteran and he's better at the line and all that. Well, how could Anthony have possibly, made up all that ground over the course of a summer? I think a lot of people are questioning how valid the quarterback competition really was, because what more could Anthony have done? So that's definitely one thing I would be curious about. And then, if they feel like they might be playing it safe with Jones, because I think you would want Anthony to continue developing if he was playing. So was his baseline of play just not good enough to be patient for his development throughout the year? Like, do you just think you can get this high floor with Daniel each week of the season that's going to be good enough to get you into the playoffs? I would just really like to see the look behind the curtain of what they really think their ceiling is this year with Jones.
And Jake Arthur with us here, SI.com, where you can find his work, Locked On Colts. Great list of him and Zach Hicks, along with Derek Schultz and Alan Pinkett a little bit as well, as they've expanded their coverage. Jake, last one for me. I threw this hypothetical at the guys about a half hour ago. You probably side a little bit more in the Notre Dame camp, so I might change it up a little bit here. Better chance Anthony Richardson is traded today or Marcus Freeman's Irish win the national title this year?
Oof. I would say Irish. I don't. As much as the Colts seem to be averse to putting all their eggs in the Anthony basket, I don't think they want to trade him either. I think if they did trade him, it would have to be a team approaching them with like an awesome offer. Because we've heard from Chris Bogg before, he wants to honor their side of things and keep guys in house, let them live out their contracts and everything. If he's going to trade someone, he wants it to be a good situation for that player. He wants it to be right for the team as well. He's not going to want to give guys away for nothing. But at the same time, I think they have kind of honored guys' trade requests before. There's been guys who have wanted out before, and as long as it was reasonable and didn't seem too toxic, they've honored that. So I still don't really see Anthony being traded, because at the same time, Daniel Jones hasn't had the best bill of health throughout his career, so if something happens to him, suddenly Riley Leonard is your quarterback. So, the Irish being on the heels of a national title appearance and having the best running back in the nation, quarterback situation seems to be looking up. I like the Irish. What say you, Kevin?
Well, I would agree. Jeff had a very quick audible groan when I said that hypothetical to you. Was that your skepticism in Notre Dame?
No, I felt like we were being warmed up when you originally asked the question about would Indiana make the Final Four this year. And now he's pivoted with you to Notre Dame, and I feel like it was a long play setup by Kevin, is what it feels like.
Jake is much more than the Notre Dame fan. I'm still just trying to play a little bit more to Jake Arthur of the world.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
He's using you, Jake. He's using you.
Yes, Jake, I would agree with you. I thought you really said the Richardson part very well. I would agree. Yeah, it might sound weird to some people, but I don't get the vibe that, like, this is going to be whatever. Kenny Pickett, Sam Howell, I don't know, some of these quarterbacks that have moved here in the last couple of days. So, yes, I thought that was very well said.
Well, I appreciate it. I try to speak well for you guys at 8 in the morning.
Always good to talk to you. And as I said, Jake Arthur, Locked On Colts. You can find that anywhere podcasts can be found. You can read his stuff at si.com. We appreciate a few minutes of your time this morning. We'll be watching the Wires with you all day long.
Absolutely. Thanks, fellas.
There you go.
Jake.
Nice of him to stop by this morning on a Tuesday morning. And I get the sense, Kevin, more than anything, you're just excited for real week one of college football to come. Like, it's here. Let's go.
I love college football more than you love the Tour de France.
Not true. Not possible.
Whoa.
Not possible.
Whoa.
Fighting
Dang,
words.
Jeff shot that down real quick. We have beef. Smell that, Mark? It's beef this morning.
I love both, by the way.
Ooh. I know. I love both stuff. Nah.
Come on now.
Pick a lane, brother.
Your wife doesn't want to hear that.
Well, who's your favorite kid?
Oh,
No.
I have a theory about this.
Who's your favorite kid?
James Boyd. Feel free.
So I tell them, well, first of all, when I walk in the house, whenever they see me, I tell them the best thing ever happened to them. So, of course, I'm the favorite kid.
Who cares about your sister?
I say this as a twin who lives who still lives closer to her parents than I do. So I think she's a favorite at the moment. But I think it's momentary. Or is that a word? I think that there are certain moments where you fluctuate between which kids you like more. Because I know raising
I think
twins.
Very well said.
There is no way my parents liked both of us equally all the time. That's the narrative with twins, is like, oh, you got to love them all equally. I was not always the best kid. So, yeah, that's my theory there.
Look at that. Leave it to James Boyd to come up with such
Your
great
father of three, Mark. Where are you at on that?
The rankings change daily.
Yes.
I will say this.
With three, there's always one that's just the a-hole. That's how it works. There's always one that's in a bad mood. They're just like, what's
always
your
one that
deal
has
today?
a non-conference schedule
Yeah.
that you roll your eyes at.
telling
Take
you
a
this-
nap? Like, what's going on
Well, I mean,
here?
you keep giving me Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, and Indiana State, and we can have a conversation later on.
I'm telling you now, if I have more than 3 kids down the line, you all can quote me on this, Mark. You can clip it now. I will absolutely have favorites. If I have 4 kids, I'm choosing
Will you
favorite.
tell them?
Yes, I'm not about to be lying to them.
Every day when he goes, you know how some families have like that chalkboard, the message board up in the kitchen?
Yeah.
Every day James is going to have today's rankings.
Yeah, I'm going to have the rankings. It's like Deion Sanders and his kids.
Days without one of my kids being an a-hole. 0 is what it says.
It's like you take like the number 1 ranking and you just slowly lower it, and like you feel the heart sink. You're like, nope, you're not number 1 today.
This is what happens, though. You're going to wake up one morning and you go to the chalkboard to make your rankings, and you go, no, you'll see a message that says, no, Dad, you're the blank.
Well, then that person is getting sleeping in the
you just got to sleeping in the shed at that point. I mean, hey, it's a rite of passage.
You are sleeping in the shed.
Look, it's one of the reasons I do what I do. I love sports. I've told you a million times, Mark. You've heard me say it. You give me a championship competition in just about anything, I'll put down the remote and watch it for 5 minutes.
I don't know if I can believe you and your Tour de France love being the same as college football.
Dude, would you like to check my phone reel?
Whoa.
We'll see.
I don't want to check that.
I know. I'm
not
going
that algorithm is between you
the fact
and yourself.
that I was offering it up should
I
let
saw,
you know it's okay.
I've seen these texts
I saw the
coming
text
in.
message picture that was sent to you a couple weeks ago.
Which one?
And I wanted no part of that.
Well, that was on the actual text line. That was not to my phone. That was public.
Screenshots work.
I'm a little nervous. It was downloaded and sent to you.
All right, Mark, we'll figure this all out during the check down.
The Morning Checkdown on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
We'll get to the college football schedule for the weekend coming up in a moment, but first, cut down day in the National Football League. Indianapolis Colts, like everybody else, have until 4 p.m. this afternoon. James, do we see any even mild surprises today?
Yeah, I think the question is, throughout our show, is just Juju Brents. I personally think that he will be on the 53-man roster, but as our buddy Jake Arthur just said from Colts SI, I don't know if it's like 100% locked. So that's the name I'm keeping an eye on. And I guess Jelani Woods would be another one, too, because he's a former third-round pick.
Anything for you, Kevin? That you got a keen eye on?
Yeah, probably echo both of that. Do we see anything else on the trade front? Last night, obviously, the Colts traded 6th-round pick for a corner. We've talked about that. We'll continue to share some more info there. But yeah,
Bring me Micah Parsons via trade.
Those would be probably the big items that I'm watching for. Who are the injured reserve candidates to return? And then as we talk tomorrow morning, are there any waiver claims? Typically, those oftentimes can fall into draft picks that you liked that you just missed out on in the draft. You see another team cut them, and then you want to try and, hey, let's give them an opportunity in our building there. Is there any Kenny Moores or Jack Doyles, lingering around there?
Well, the Colts have not been waiting on that. They've been using lower round draft picks all over the place. Their latest yesterday is a 6th-rounder in 2026 for safety Mekhi Blackman from the Minnesota Vikings. A lot of business done this year in the offseason between the Vikings and the Colts, James.
Just a little bit there, but certainly a noteworthy move. Mekhi Blackman has not played since 2023, which was his rookie season. Missed all of last year with an ACL, but he is back healthy. And what does that mean for the rest of the cornerback room? That is the question.
All right, we'll keep an eye on that all day long. Listen live right here at 93.5, 107.5 The Fan for the very latest in any NFL and Colts moves throughout the day.
Tommy DeVito released by the Giants, so Tommy Cutlett's a free agent.
There you go.
I would trade Anthony Richardson, and Tommy DeVito and his agent are calling Indy home.
Like I just said on Twitter, Tommy Cutlets belongs in New York City. That man can't play for any other city.
Well, just bring all the Giants quarterbacks.
Get the Jets on the phone.
That's right. WNBA tonight, Caitlin Clark will not be playing tonight. She hasn't played since the 15th of July, but the Fever will host the Seattle Storm, and she is Nike's newest signature athlete. That means she gets her own logo, soon to be her own shoe, and down the line, even her own clothing line, Kevin. So good for Caitlin Clark in the absence of actually playing right now because she's been hurt.
What a huge week for the Fever. I mean, I cannot reiterate that enough. If you look at the standings right now, the teams right above them, right below them, they're going to see them all here tonight. Seattle, the Sparks, and the Valkyries. That's LA and Golden State coming up this weekend as they start a Western road trip. If you go 1-2, 0-3, something like that this week, then it's not looking great for the playoffs. But if you're able to continue to beat Seattle, which they've done this season, and get some out west, then they could be in good standing here. 2 weeks to go, 2 weeks from today, the regular season finale.
And across the hall, some news for the Indiana Pacers yesterday, Kevin Bauer.
Yeah, they're going to bump up Jim Boylan. I think we talked about this on yesterday's show, to the front of the bench to replace Mike Weiner. as their, again, kind of front of the bench assistant. So still with Lloyd Pierce, still with Junie Busek coming back, and then it will be Jim Boylan, former head coach here in the NBA. They added Johnny Carpenter to the staff, got some Virginia ties, got some ties with Rick Carlisle as well, dating back to the Dallas days. So Rick Carlisle will add Jim Boylan, who I think you saw do halftime interviews with Jeremiah Johnson this past season, probably always viewed as the front of the bench assistant anyways. Now he will be up there for all 82 games.
All right, Kevin, you're disqualified from this question because we know where your viewing habits are going to be this weekend. But if you had to choose, James, for college football this weekend, are you interested in Purdue Ball State, Notre Dame at Miami, Indiana hosting Old Dominion?
Is this even a question?
Or Butler at Northern Iowa? Which one are you personally interested in?
Ohio State and Texas, but of course it's Notre Dame, Miami. I mean,
okay, it has to be.
Dear Lord, did you read off those 4 games? If he said anything else besides Notre Dame, Miami, I'd have to check his pulse.
I was gonna say, as the guy who isn't a live or die with college football person, I will certainly live and die with the bigger games. So yes, it has to be a marquee matchup for me to watch.
Todd Meyer is somewhere shaking his fist at the radio right now. He can't believe you guys didn't say Ball State Purdue. Come on.
By the way, shout out to Devin Mockabee, Purdue running back. He is one of the only notable players to stay at Purdue for Barry Odom. Like, in a day and age where everyone transfer portals it, and many of his marquee teammates did that last year. I think that's a pretty cool story that Devin Mockabee is going to finish his career with the Boilers. I believe he is moving up the charts there in terms of an all-time leading rusher as well. So you don't get many of those stories in 2025 college athletics, particularly college football. So shout out to the man from the Evansville area, Devin Mockabee. I love his running style.
All right, some Major League Baseball to tell you about yesterday. The Dodgers beat the Reds 7-0. St. Louis over the Pirates 7-6. The White Sox shut out the Royals 7-0. And Cam Raleigh continues to impress in the American League. I said Cam, didn't I? Cal Raleigh, 50 home runs. It's insane. These are historic numbers. We've never seen this from a catcher before, and he's only the second switch hitter in Major League Baseball history to hit 50 home runs from both sides of the plate.
He's incredible. Big dumper getting it done.
We got to work on that nickname, though, don't we?
I love that nickname.
I think it's stuck now, man. The way he's balling, he is the big dumper.
30 years from now, people are going to be look back on, oh, yeah, the big dumper.
Yeah, the greatness of big dumper.
Mm-hmm.
Man, fun to watch, though. Baseball's actually been fun for me this year. I kind of fell out of like with it for a minute, but I've
saying a lot for a Reds and a Rockies fan.
I was going to say, right now, you're loving it right now?
Well, actually, at one point when I worked in the Northwest, I did like when the Mariners had Ken Griffey Jr. and Randy Johnson and stuff like that. I was young, but no, it's always been the Reds. That's always been the first and foremost team.
Was that a young bandwagon, Jeff, that I'm hearing?
No, I was there for 4 years as just out of college, so I kind of went to the games all the time.
Remember years ago when Rob Lowe was at the NFL game, he had the NFL logo on that? Yes. Jeff, he just says the MLB logo.
Have you seen the Rockies
Fan of
lately?
baseball.
No, the Reds, I tell you all the time, Reds were my first ever Major League Baseball game. They've always been my team.
Are you going to abandon being a Reds fan?
No.
Are you going to abandon following this team?
Hey, who was pumping up Ellie De La Cruz in a loss because he scored from first base?
Phrasing there. You were, yeah, good Lord.
Okay.
Not the first time we've pumped up old Ellie. Is it best when your team just, like, sees their season die out west? So, like, you don't really have to watch it? Is that a little bit of a, well, at least I'm not living and dying at, 8:48 p.m. with, like, bullpen pitches. At least it's happening while I'm in REM sleep and I just wake up to it.
Do you remember when you were a little kid and you'd fall asleep early for school and the first thing you'd ask your dad in the morning was your team did?
I remember asking that about the Duke-UConn national title game. I was stunned when he told me that UConn beat Duke. Ricky Moore for UConn.
Did your dad ever mess with you at first just to kind of get a bad reaction from you?
I don't think my dad was that cruel there.
Oh, my dad, he wouldn't go on with it all day long, but he'd like just to see my reaction.
Yeah.
I remember my dad
at that age, it can be an emotional state. Hell,
I know.
I've been watching my nephew react to sports, and man, you never know.
What were you gonna say?
I'm gonna say, y'all know your nephew had to be going through some things this summer with the Pacers. I mean, my goodness. But yeah, I remember my dad stayed up for the Syracuse-UConn 6 overtime game years ago, and he looked so tired the next morning. But as a sports lover, he was like, James, I had to see how it ended. So I went to school refreshed, and he went to work very tired, but the man has no regrets, and I respect him for it.
That was a lot of fun. I will say
Johnny
this.
Flynn days back in the day.
I will say this.
Devendorf up on the scores table after that game.
Yeah.
My parents would let me stay up for bigger games.
Well, look at that.
I appreciate that.
Shout out to the cool parents out there. My
Shout out to
parents
the
were
Rickards.
haters.
All right. Coming up in a moment, we will continue to talk about the Colts. They got a lot of decisions to make later on today. We'll get to the text line full-throated for the first time today at 239-1070 as we continue. The Fan Morning Show, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on Sports Radio 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Happy Tuesday. It will be anything but for a number of potential NFL players throughout the country today, as it is cut-down day. And they used to do it a little bit at a time, but over the years they've just decided, you know what, you guys keep as many people as you want in camp, but everybody's got to have a 53-man roster by 4 p.m. on the 26th of August this particular year. And so there'll be a lot of guys who don't want phone calls today. They don't want to knock on their door. It used to be when you're out at camp, they'd come knock at your door. Now it's your cell phone. Keep your cell phone handy and ready. And a lot of guys don't want that. And then the worst, James, is when you make today's 53-man roster, but then because of shuffling and maybe picking up somebody from another roster, you go to get to work tomorrow morning and you find out, yeah, ultimately you didn't make the team. It's tough.
It is tough, but that is life of an NFL fringe athlete. So we'll see a lot of guys trying to chase their dreams today and trying to validate their dreams today, and we'll see how it all shakes out here in a few hours.
Let's go to the text line right now, and Brandon writes in, Kevin, just my thoughts on Anthony Richardson. I would not be disappointed if they did is that trade today? But I doubt that happens. I think the Colts are going to keep him around as long as they can. You can call him silly or whatever, but Riley Leonard showed me the other day, really liked what he had to offer. I'm not saying he's any better than Daniel Jones or anything like that, but I think we could get by with Daniel Jones and Riley Leonard. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, get by is quite the compliment. Yeah, I don't see them moving Anthony Richardson in an imminent state by any means. Maybe I'm dead wrong on that. I look at Riley Leonard as a guy that continues to need development. Obviously, a really nice half from him the other day, but I think he's a guy that, again, has to learn how to deliver from the pocket. And, whether that takes a couple of years, we'll see. But, nice option. Don't know if I'd have him necessarily be your backup. With Richardson, I don't understand maybe what is the urgency in moving him. For Daniel Jones, sitting all of a sudden turned him into a better player than where he was at in November. Maybe Anthony Richardson sitting, all of a sudden someone says, you know what, I'm kind of intrigued by him. Our quarterback situation got a little murky as the season moved along.
Well, I guess the pushback will be that Daniel Jones did ask to be released, and then he joined the Vikings, and then he sat out the rest of the season. So,
well, he was going to sit with New York. New York wasn't going to play him because of the injury clause.
But I guess going somewhere where you have an offensive mind or coach that is more, I guess, suited to rehab your image a bit, because we all know that Kevin O'Connell is currently looked at as the QB whisperer, somebody who can help revive your career. I'm not saying he did a ton for Daniel Jones, but he did switch teams is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I just kind of look at it as Daniel Jones in all likelihood is not going to start all 17 games. So if and when that happens,
which I agree with,
I'd probably rather see Anthony Richardson get one more crack at it and see what happens.
Graham from Avon, we were talking earlier about the fan base seemingly being disgruntled right now, and vocally disgruntled about the leadership with the Indianapolis Colts. And Graham says, yeah, definitely ticked off, and I edited that. Shane has no accountability of what he says and just expects us to believe him when he lies about things like he's going to be the starter the whole season. Thoughts on that, James?
Yeah, I think there is a certain level of uncertainty that fans should have about everything that Shane Steichen says, because what he's been saying, at least in the past, has not held up when push comes to shove. And I think in the story I put out last week, kind of detailing why it isn't just Anthony's fault, story over at The Athletic, the line that a lot of people kind of gave me feedback about was this paragraph I had in there, and I'll just read it aloud. So this is in a 2-week span last year when Anthony got benched initially for Joe Flacco and then got reinserted a couple weeks later for Joe Flacco. So that first week, when I asked Shane, hey, do you think AR will ever start again for this franchise? He says, quote, I can't predict the future. And then they moved to Joe Flacco, and I believe this might have been Kevin or somebody else just getting clarity. Hey, by the way, is Joe Flacco your starter for the rest of the year? And Shane confirms that, yes, quote, he will be our starter going forward, meaning through the rest of the year. And then when they bench Joe Flacco because they lose 2 games in a row and they're worse with him than with Anthony Richardson, they go back to AR, and then Steichen says, quote, Anthony Richardson is going to be, quote, our franchise quarterback. Those are 3 wildly different statements, all made within 14 days. So if people don't believe what you say now, they have no reason to, because what you said then has never held up. that's my biggest issue with Shane Steichen is why would anyone believe in a plan that you give whenever whatever plan you gave, you've never stuck to it. And then on top of that, my biggest issue on top of him just the talking and all of that is one thing, but how the development affects the player or whatever plan you have affects the player is another thing. And again, you said Anthony Richardson is not ready to start. He needs to go to the bench. After the tap out, he's got a lot going on. He needs to chill out. And then you stunk for 2 games. You fell below 500 2 games. And then you were like, you know what? Wait a second. Even if with all his flaws, his preparation goes, it's not where I want it to be, he's still better than the other guys. Let's go back to him. What does that mean? You told us he had to sit. And then, again, I think it was you, me, everyone. How much can a guy change in 2 weeks? Newsflash, you probably can't. So that's the biggest thing with Shane is you kind of flip-flopping.
Yeah, and maybe on the other side we can play this, Steichen audio in regards to Richardson. But, I go back to the combine, James, and, he mentioned, he's learned, Shane, this is, learning from some of the mistakes of, I need to set the standard more clear, reiterating the standard over and over again, not saying at the start of training camp, at the start of the season, and just hoping that, that's going to be there throughout the season. Because clearly last year, his messaging behind the scenes ran into issues. And at the end of the day, that's what truly matters. We bring up, obviously, Belichick. And sure, your messaging in public is one thing. Yeah. But when you're messaging behind the scenes, which he admitted had issues last season, then that's where the problem comes into play. And with Richardson specifically, his team, according to Stephen Holder, has had some frustrated moments with the organization and what the public messaging has been of their player there. And again, I largely think it's, some form of competitive advantage and or I'm not going to say anything because I'm going to protect, the player at all costs. But at times, I think when you don't offer transparency, it then doesn't protect him, i.e. talking about Anthony's back last year like it was just some casual thing when it ended up costing him multiple games. And honestly, you could probably look at that back and say that might have been, one of the bigger nails in the coffin of here's just one more thing after he had shown some better football there, the Jets, the Patriots game in the latter stages of the season.
All right, coming up in a moment, we'll hear from Shane Steichen. What did he have to say yesterday? How's it all fold in to what we've been talking about and what the quarterback situation looks like down the road? It comes your way next. It's 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome into Cut Down Day here in the National Football League on 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. We won't have definitive answers until later on this afternoon on what the 53-man roster looks like at the end of the day. It'll probably change in the next couple of days as well. But we'll keep you up to date on it all day long. Us here until 10. Any big moves will be covered by ESPN. And then, of course, at noon, it'll be Jake Query. And 3 to 6, it'll be John Michael Vincent, or JMV as you like to call him. JD from Colorado on the text line at 239-1070 says, Shane clearly had an impact on quarterbacks when he was an OC. As a head coach, he has no time to develop a quarterback. Ballard, please hire a competent quarterback guru for this team. JD in Colorado says that, Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a lot of debate about the offensive staff, and, he opted for continuity with that group. And, I know I've brought this up before, but, when you go back to Andrew Luck and think about the college career of Andrew Luck, and Chuck Pagano had Bruce Arians and Clyde Christensen. That was quite the OC and quarterbacks coach for Andrew Luck. That is not the resume of Jim Bob Cooter and Cam Turner. So, I know Shane as a head coach certainly is much more offensive-minded than Chuck Pagano, but, I found that interesting. That was a storyline for me early in the offseason. Would you change the offensive staff? Did you feel like the voices needed to change around Anthony Richardson at all? They opted for no on that front, and, obviously it hasn't played out very well.
Let's go to the phone lines at 239-1070. Bobby's been hanging on for a minute. Thanks, Bobby, for waiting your turn, but we appreciate you being there. What's on your mind this morning?
Well, thanks for taking my call first off. But I was just wondering, we've seen it in the past, whether it be Ryan Lee, some of the quarterbacks lately that are signing multi-million-dollar contracts, say out of college. And I'm just wondering about maturity on these guys. Is Anthony Richardson turns around and he says, I got $1 million, multi-million dollars in my pocket. And I just think it takes a very, very special person to be able to say, yeah, I've got this multi-million-dollar contract in my pocket, and I'm a millionaire and never have to work again the rest of my life. But I just think it takes a very special person to be able to still have the work ethic and the maturity to turn around and go out there and say, hey, I want to be the best. Man's got all the talent, physical talent in the world, but does he have is it $1 million body and a 5-cent brain?
So I'll take this one. I see where Bobby's coming from, but I think the thing that we always kind of leave out of the equation is, number one, he was 20 when he was going through the draft process. Got drafted at 21. Yes, he got a ton of money, life-changing money, $34 million, fully guaranteed, will change anybody's life. However, think back to when you were 21, and if you did everything correctly, and yeah, you might say, well, if I was in those shoes, well, you're not. A lot of us aren't. So the world that we're trying to put ourselves into is just one we can't really relate to at all. But I think for Anthony to kind of clear this up, he has his pitfalls, he's made his mistakes, and I have laid all of that out. I think the majority of why he hasn't worked out is obviously on him as the player. But I think some of his pitfalls, Kevin, and we've talked about this, I've talked about this on the record, off the record with people, is naivety. It's not apathy. Like he goes into places and he just doesn't care to work hard or doesn't care to become a better quarterback, doesn't care to be the best player he can be for his team. A lot of it just growing up, he didn't know how to be a professional. And that is, in my opinion, where the Colts scouting department, how do you not see that? How do you not foresee that and go after that and address that a lot earlier? Because, again, when you get to the point where you have to bench a guy because he isn't working hard enough, that isn't the first time you've told him that. So how didn't you get through to him? But, again, I think it's naivety more than him not caring or him being arrogant.
Yeah, Bobby, thank you for the call. I think there's a lot of truth in what Bobby is thinking or asking about.
For sure.
And so much of it, I do think, James, comes back to the evaluation point of Anthony Richardson in college. And yes, you are projecting a little bit, but this is why you have area scouts. This is why you have people that sift through every single ounce
private investigators
of background material on these players. Yes, that's the exact way to describe it. And yeah, you again are still projecting a little bit. Hey, what will millions of dollars do to this guy? And he did grow up in a climate where I think there are many more people around him that are gravitating towards that millions of dollars, that it's harder for him to kind of keep them away a little bit here. And a lot of people moved up from Florida with him, and that's a good thing. And also it can be potentially a bad thing from that. So this just, again, gets back to the evaluation part of Richardson and projecting him. And I think the Colts were too, frankly, I just think they were too lackadaisical in that process, thinking that, yeah, it'll work out. We'll have the right culture for him, and he'll settle in nicely. And it's like, well, you better be right on this, because it's quite the big risk on the field and off the field, and it's a massive, massive investment. And I just think it was a misevaluation dating back to that 2023 NFL draft.
I was having this conversation with someone over the weekend. I've always felt this way about quarterbacks too, and whether it's Peyton Manning, who's the ultimate example of it. We saw Tom Brady. I think Patrick Mahomes is like this. Joe Burrow. So many of the really, really good quarterbacks, and even some guys that aren't that talented but end up making long careers in the NFL because of this thing I'm about to talk about. One thing I want in an NFL quarterback, if he's my quarterback, like he's obsessed with being an NFL quarterback. All day long, everything about him. He's getting his body ready. He's looking at more film. You know that when he's going to sleep at night, he's going over plays in his head like, okay, well, I know I watched all this film today, but what if that outside linebacker, for no reason at all, does this instead? What's the wide receiver going to do to adjust to that? And when that happens, what am I going to do if the blitz is coming? There are guys who are just obsessive about everything that has to do with being an NFL quarterback. I think to be successful at any level, whether you're ultra talented like a Peyton Manning or a Patrick Mahomes, or you're a Brock Purdy that's getting every last ounce out of your ability to play in the National Football League, those are the kind of guys to me that it's just like their entire lives are built around being quarterback in the NFL, and nothing else even comes close.
Yeah, I think what makes the draft selection head-scratching looking back on it is Shane Steichen pretty much said that in what was the dominant trait he wanted in a quarterback. You think about it, Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, Phillip Rivers, different shapes and sizes, different styles of quarterback, all three of them. But the common thread, according to Steichen, with all three of them is, and again, an obsession to play that position. And then if you look at Chris Ballard's comments in regards to really quarterback play in general, he's often said, you know, at some point you have to deliver from the pocket, basically saying at some point you've got to become a pinpoint accuracy type of guy. Your legs get cut off, if you will. Lamar Jackson is probably the poster child of it. For as great of a runner as Lamar is, he does not get anywhere near the credit that he deserves as a thrower of the football and can win games from the pocket. And yet the player the Colts drafted, Richardson, those are two of the bigger questions about him coming out of Florida is are you married to the craft to the degree that you feel is necessary, and can you deliver from the pocket? So you could honestly do a 30 for 30 and probably a week-long summer series on Anthony Richardson and what went wrong. And there are many pieces to that pie there, but that aspect was always a bit confusing to me. And, I know I said this back in 2023. That's why I was such a big believer of you do anything and everything to get up to that first overall pick. You want to be the one choosing from the quarterbacks, not having the quarterbacks left on the shelf for you. Would it have cost a lot? Yes, but it wouldn't have cost as much to move from 4-1 as it did for Carolina to move from 9-1. And then you're up there and you're saying, all right, now let's look at C.J. Stroud. Now let's look at Bryce Young. Obviously, let's look at Richardson. Let's look at Levis, all these quarterbacks there, and see what happens.
So what if they go 9-8 this year and Daniel Jones is okay, and it's a one-year deal, and Anthony Richardson sits and learns and matures because he's still really young? Do we start all over with him again in the offseason this coming year, James?
I wouldn't. And if they were trying to pitch that or sell it to this fan base, they wouldn't buy it. Why would you? No, sir, I'm serious. I mean, feel free to answer. Like, why would you?
No, for the reasons you laid out in that terrific article you wrote over the weekend. It just has been flip-flop, topsy-turvy the entire way.
Yeah, and if Daniel Jones is the guy that got you to 9-8, and if you make the playoffs with Daniel Jones, that's the guy you should be talking to about being your quarterback. I'm not saying that I would be gung-ho about it, but, yeah, like playing it, Daniel Jones, him playing well enough to get you a winning record, possibly into the playoffs, and then pivoting back to the guy you benched for a second time, no, that would make no sense in the world to me. And I don't care what they tell me about whatever development plan they have. That, to me, is the part where I just can't get with it. What development plan? And they might be able to really believe what they're trying to sell us, but historically, it just never works that way with a guy who is your own guy. When you draft a guy and you bench him twice, and I guess the second time it was open competition, so technically not a benching, even though he went back to the bench. But nevertheless, semantics aside, what are you actually talking about?
Yeah, I will probably just say that sign me up for the 2026 draft and see what happens there at quarterback. If that hypothetical plays out, Jeff, again, I've said this endlessly, but this day and age in the AFC, those Band-Aids, it's like jumping in the pool with a Band-Aid on.
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow. Good luck.
Those ain't Band-Aids, and they're young. They're not going anywhere.
Maybe the best of all of them, Lamar Jackson. I mean,
and the list, like, again, yes, you have your 4 that have made the Final Four each of the last 2 years in Stroud and Lamar and Josh Allen and Mahomes, but still, you have a Herbert, you have a Burrow, it's kind of wild. You get into this Miami thing here in week 1. It's amazing how different their record is with Tua and without. I mean, with Tua, they are like a legit playoff. I mean, hell, they made the playoffs twice in Mike McDaniel's first 2 years. If you're New England right now, you feel pretty good about Drake May. Obviously, got a long ways to go, but again, the depth of this conference, you got to go find one of those guys. And that, to me, screams 2026 draft, given everything that I have in front of me right here on August 26th.
All right, we'll talk to Zach Osterman about all of this coming up in just a moment here as we continue taking your texts and phone calls at 239-1070. It's NFL Cutdown Day here on The Fan.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on Sports Radio 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Been talking about the Colts all morning long here on the Fan Morning Show with Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, Jeff Rickard, Mark Dykton on the ones and twos. Once again, just slamming it on the tunes today.
This is a video that came on MTV on TRL or something, and I'd have to change the channel if my parents walked in.
You better hide
This is
the kids, Mark Dykton.
The Xtina era. Oh my God!
I do feel like kids missed out on a good era when you had the music channels that would just play the music videos all day.
Yes.
Is that your theme for today, Mark? Just like teenage music videos?
I'm just going with ladies that put out good music.
There we go.
So yeah, Xtina. Whoa, good Lord! I had to change that channel mighty quick.
I need a shirt that says "Good Lord," a little dash that says "By Mark."
My mom would be like, "What are you watching?" I'm like, just music videos, Mom. What is this? I'm like,
hey, if Mark says "Good Lord,"
let Christina do her thing. I can't help that she's all in water. What's happening here?
Yeah, if Mark says "Good Lord," the Lord is not involved.
I'm expanding my musical taste, Mom.
It's in the other room. I'm busy. Later on tonight, Storm taking on the Fever over at the Fieldhouse. You'll hear that game live at 6:45 with the Fan pregame show. Eddie Garrison, then John Nolan has the play-by-play at 7. If you're going to the game, enjoy it. The Fever need a win. Once again, without Caitlin Clark, who's been unable to play because of injuries since the 15th of July. More on that coming up in a minute. It is cut-down day in the NFL. We'll be keeping a close eye on the Colts. We've been talking about the Anthony Richardson situation, and folks have been chiming in on the text line all morning long. Cody writes his take. Watch the Manning cast. Peyton's on his couch and still lives and dies with every play. You can see and feel his love for the game with every play through the screen. He's retired and just watching. AR doesn't seem to have that passion when he's on the field and probably in meetings. Obviously, Peyton is one of one, even comparing AR to a guy on the rosters, like comparing him to Riley Leonard. And I wonder if that's part of it, too, especially a guy with so much inexperience at the position. Maybe he could make up with it with just a burning desire to 24 hours a day, every second of the day, try to figure out a way to be better and smarter about it. And from the outside, it doesn't appear like that is necessarily the case. Is that fair?
Maybe.
He's already been sat down because of that once.
Yeah, but I would say, and Kevin, you can speak to this, at every turn this summer, Shane has said he has been doing those things as far as the working hard and going over tape. And if you want to get to the audio that he kind of gave you yesterday when you were asking how he feels about his place in the franchise, Shane mentioned a lot of those things that apparently AR has been approaching the right way for the last however many months. And so I don't know if that's necessarily a fair statement to how to assess him now.
But here's my question.
Versus how he used to be.
Is that a conscious decision for him, which is important, or just an organic need, passion to do? You see the difference?
Yeah, I don't know. I would have to ask Anthony Richardson that question. Yeah. I mean, it's always hard to get into the player's psyche and their makeup, because I don't really care which one it is. Just do it.
Yeah, we got Zach Osterman joining here in a few, so I don't think we got time necessarily to get even deeper into the conversation with the audio. For those, I know we've hit the Richardson topic a lot here over the last half hour, so if you're just joining us, the Colts did make a trade late last night. Mekhi Blackmon, a corner that they have added here from the Minnesota Vikings. That was a 6th-round pick they sent the Vikings there. Torn ACL the first day of training camp last year. So former 3rd-round pick, 2023. Played about half Minnesota snaps as a rookie. Did play in this year's preseason, but a 5'11 corner. So once again, size not really a big requirement for Louis Anarumo. Sounds like can definitely play outside. Don't know how much slot background there is, but again, go back to a conversation we had earlier in the show. I've never seen a Ballard position group add more in an offseason without departures. They're bringing back their top 4 corners from last year. Kenny Moore, Jalen Jones, Samuel Womack, Chris Lamons, even Juju Brents played a little bit. And then if you look at what they've added, former All-Pro Travaris Ward, former All-Pro and Xavier Howard. I know Justin Wally tore his ACL. That's a 3rd-round pick. And then Blackmon, a former 3rd-rounder. So now, not all these guys are exactly, right there. Obviously, Howard didn't play football last year. Blackmon didn't play football last year. So they've got a lot to prove. But just in general, strictly resumes, I cannot recall any position group ever seen this much investment in one offseason.
Well, that's Lou Anarumo probably talking, as you pointed out, and fewer linebackers, more secondary guys, a lot of dime, a lot of nickel, and you just got to get pressure on the quarterback to make it all work. At the end of the day, it's great to have all those guys, but how many sacks they end up getting this year? That's how many pressures do they end up having? To me, that's just as key as everything else.
Number one pass defense in the preseason, right?
Yeah. I'll take it. Zach Osterman joins us now.
You're laughing. I was serious with that statement.
But I'm laughing because I'm laughing with you, not at you.
No, I'm laughing at you.
Oh, wow. Zach, are you laughing this morning? How are things going for you?
I don't know if I'm laughing, but I can't complain.
Zach Osterman joins us on the Payless Liquors hotline. Cut down day. Anything that you think could be a surprise before it's all said and done?
I probably haven't followed it closely enough to be honest. I mean, from the cutting down, the cutting down in my sport happens in the winter for the most part.
Well, so, now there's actually a lot of cuts.
I was going to say,
when
what?
It comes to college athletics, Zach Osterman from the Indy Star, obviously IU. They're going to get ready here. Old Dominion coming up this weekend, game 1 of year 2 of the Cignetti era. Let's just start with the Curt Cignetti personality, Zach. Obviously last year at this time, he went above and beyond from a talking standpoint. How would you compare the Cignetti bravado leading into year 1 to what we've heard from him in those media sessions here leading into year 2? On the same meter or maybe not as full throttle?
Yeah, I mean, I've written about this. I think other people have too. I think listen, there's an element to Cignetti that's just his personality. Like, he's not afraid to speak his mind, and he's confident, and he's willing to be sort of publicly confident. But I don't know that he feels that he's kind of got to, stir the pot to get it to boil this year the way that he did a year ago when he talked about, especially in the preseason. And of course, some of what he says happens during the season, but a lot more of it, if you really think back to his first 12 months, happens before the season starts, in terms of, maybe just trying to kind of get his team on side a little bit. More than that, I think get his fan base on side, get his fan base kind of ginned up and really sort of, kind of believing in the project and the process and all those different kinds of things. Maybe he gets his wings clipped a little bit with what he says on game day before the Notre Dame game. But then the flip side is he also comes out after that game and says, hey, listen, the better team won. We got beat good today. He's not afraid to own it, basically, when it goes against him as well. I think more of it is just him knowing, or him having the confidence that his roster, certainly, but maybe even more than that, like his fan base, his booster base, his athletics department, all those sort of constituencies, nobody needs convinced anymore. Nobody needs, kind of sparked to life in the same way, because everybody can see what, if they buy into, use the cliche, the process, what the result is.
Zach, obviously, as you've laid out in a terrific piece, in the Indy Star, the title of it being Indiana football's most anticipated season shows historic support, yet Hoosiers haven't changed. One thing that has changed is the quarterback position. Fernando Mendoza is now QB1. How much pressure do you think is on this guy to deliver? And also, just how good is he? Because he has got some NFL rumblings.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's certainly pressure to deliver if you consider what Indiana got out of the quarterback position a season ago. But I think that, not that Cignetti's the ultimate QB whisperer, but if you look at his recent history, I mean, at least his last four quarterbacks, I don't know if I can go all the way back to his FCS JMU days, but his last four quarterbacks have all been transfers, and the first three were all conference. Todd Centeio was Conference Player of the Year. Jordan McLeod was Conference Player of the Year. Of course, Rourke didn't quite get there last year, but he was second team All Big Ten, and he was, certainly considered one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten, if not in college football last season. And then you take Fernando Mendoza. To your point, he comes in with some NFL buzz. I know there are some things that, particularly about the way he delivers the ball, that NFL scouts like. I mean, it's the guy that threw for 3,000 yards last season, and that was in front of an offensive line that allowed 41 sacks. So, it's never this simple, but there is at least some some element of imagine what he'll do in front of a better offensive line, maybe with a little bit more depth at the skill positions as well. I think there's a lot of belief both in Mendoza and then also in the process that Curt Cignetti, Mike Shanahan, who's been his offensive coordinator for several years now, have to take their offense and take whatever the, sort of the underlying principles of how they get the ball to the perimeter, RPO situations, things like that, and fit them to every different quarterback strengths. Because if you go back and look, like Jordan McLeod was a lot more mobile than Curtis Rourke. Of course, we had no idea Rourke was playing on a torn ACL through most of last season. But the point is, that's two different quarterbacks. That's two different ways of getting offense moving down the field and in the end zone. And the ultimate result is very, very similar. I think there's, like I said, belief in Mendoza and some of the things that maybe he'll be able to, again, particularly from a mobility perspective, that Indiana just wasn't comfortable doing with Rourke last season. But I also think that there's also just belief in the process that leads Indiana to be able to put quarterbacks in really good positions to succeed.
Zach Osterman, Indy Star, joining us here talking about some college football. Indiana, you wrote earlier, I guess last week, that Indiana's become a straw man in the Cold War over scheduling and the future of the playoff to its own detriment. Could you expand on that for us, please?
Yeah, I mean, basically, Indiana has become, and this was kind of recycled back into the news, and I don't know how much more we need to hear about it at this point from the SEC side, but I grew up down there, and they don't let things go easily in the South sometimes, and it kind of got recycled back into the news when the SEC announced it was going to move to 9 conference games, and essentially Indiana has kind of become, and this even maybe goes back to last season, sort of that critics of the way the playoff is currently want to sort of point to Indiana and say, well, look, they didn't play anybody. A 9-win SEC team is better. The SEC's method is better. The SEC's process is better. These are obviously unwinnable arguments because there is no perfect way to sort of solve them. But Indiana has kind of become the easy punching bag, and then, of course, that spins forward this summer into the debates about Indiana's non-conference scheduling philosophy. Curt Cignetti says what he says at SEC Media, or Big Ten Media Day. He gets a lot of people down south riled up. And the point I was trying to make is essentially Indiana doesn't have to go on some extreme PR offensive here, but it does need to recognize that where in the playoff conversation, and I don't think it's unfair for Indiana to see itself as a playoff contender. They were literally in the playoff last year. Until they get far away from that, until they get until their coach starts proving he can't hack it at that level, which is something Cignetti has roundly sort of disproven across the course of his career, Indiana has got to think in those terms and with those ambitions. And if they're going to do that, they've got to recognize that, fair or not, perception in college athletics is a thing, and Ohio State or Michigan's going to get a pass that Indiana isn't. And certainly Georgia, for example, which I believe plays in the non-conference, Charlotte, Austin Peay, and I'm struggling to remember the third team that isn't Georgia Tech. Certainly the kind of Indiana's not going to get the pass that a Georgia's going to get, or an Ole Miss or whoever. And so the point I was trying to make is just Indiana kind of needs to start fighting its corner a little bit more on this. And listen, some of that is solved naturally, particularly just once the games start, because so much of this is just like we're all desperate for college football and we don't have any yet, and so we're looking for something to talk about. We're looking for something to sort of satisfy that appetite. But if you're Indiana, let's say Indiana gets to Selection Sunday in December, 10-2, and there's an SEC team there at 9-3. Indiana's going to be fighting the perceptions around its history, its non-conference schedule, things like that. There is an ability to kind of go on the offensive a little bit more, and I think Indiana, maybe needs to consider doing that. But in the same breath, I think everyone recognizes the thing that speaks loudest is the result on the field. And if Indiana goes out and let's say they win 10 games, and one of them's a win at Iowa, the other one's a really impressive win at home against Illinois, then maybe your resume does speak a little bit more for itself. It's just it's sort of saying if Indiana is going to be a playoff contender, and it has every right to think of itself as one, because again, it was in the playoff literally 9 months ago, then it needs to act that way when it comes to public messaging, when it comes to the way that it defends itself against criticism, all those different kinds of things.
It's been on the IU beat since I was an undergrad down there. He does great work, and someone I admired back in the day. That's Zach Osterman from the Indianapolis Star. Zach, if we could shift gears to basketball, it's pretty rare, honestly, but welcome to today's day and age where we ask more football questions than basketball when it comes to Indiana University. Darren DeVries and the Puerto Rico trip. Grand takeaways. They're going to shoot a bunch of threes and maybe some questions about defending teams that are bigger. Or is that too simple of takeaways? What do you think about the 3 games down there?
Yeah, no, listen, I think you could see Indiana was going to be a much more sort of three-point shooting bend offense just by both DeVries' history and the way that he constructed this roster. I think from Indiana's perspective, there's also, again, if you want to look at the way this roster was constructed, there has been, since kind of it all came together, a pretty clear sort of hole in the sort of rim protection and rebounding sort of aspect. Now, listen, the flip side is you can go too far in the other direction, and we can argue that maybe Indiana's done a little bit of that in the last couple of years, that the blanket's never going to cover up over every single potential shortcoming or weakness. You only get 13 scholarships and 15 spots. So you're always going to have to give and take somewhere. And Indiana, can do different things to maybe mitigate the size disadvantage. And of course, there will be nights when the threes don't fall. I think you saw certainly some of the pace that DeVries talked about down in Puerto Rico. Now those games were played with a 24-second shot clock, so they were naturally going to be faster, but you could just see Indiana really emphasizing not just let's get the rebound and throw it up the floor as fast as we can, but more, pace in terms of multiple bodies getting down the floor, getting into a secondary transition offense that's meant to create a shot, even if it's not literally a transition opportunity. It is something that capitalizes on a defense's disorganization as it's recovering down the floor to create another opportunity. I think you see, it's a very experienced team, and I know that sounds simplistic, but I think a lot of people are going to look at them as, I think college basketball is looking at Indiana as brand new, which is fair because they haven't spent a lot of time together, but there is just a lot of pure college basketball minutes, games, shots, rebounds, assists, whatever on that roster. And so I think you could see some of that experience manifest itself, especially in those 2 comeback wins. And I think, listen, if you want the simplistic way, I would boil it down. It would basically be Indiana should get as much credit for its comebacks as it should get criticism for the reasons that it had to come back and the ways that it got itself into those holes. I think, it's probably something that maybe we didn't talk as much about on that trip. I didn't think Indiana started any of those 3 games particularly well, and that's reflected a lot more in the 2 games against Mega Superbet. But I think that's something that DeVries has got to kind of think about, because you're obviously in a 30-second shot clock world, not going to get the pace of the games to affect that kind of comeback in the same way. But in general, I thought you saw some promising things from Indiana. I thought you recognized, too, that those games were not Indiana's greatest priority. I think that at the end of the day, what DeVries wanted out of that tour more than anything else was the 10 practices leading up where he could have his whole team on the floor together for full practices of instruction and installation and just working through a lot of different things so that when the games do start mattering, the terminology is secondhand. The chemistry between players is a lot stronger. And so I think there's also probably an element of trying not to read too much into those games, because, it wouldn't shock me if Indiana was at the beach the morning of, the Saturday night game, for example. I don't think DeVries was actively trying to lose the games, but I don't think he will have wanted the games to be so all-consuming that he didn't get other, benefits. His team didn't get other benefits from the trip as well. So, it was an interesting first look. I think Indiana's still got a lot to improve on. But I think it gives DeVries and his staff a lot to chew on, over these next few weeks as they build up toward the proper preseason.
All right, Zach, thanks so much. Get ready and buckle yourself in for Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, and Indiana State over the next 3 weeks. Good luck.
I'll do it. Thanks for having me, as always.
Thanks, Zach. Appreciate you. Zach Osterman, Indy Star, joining us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. In the meantime, very quickly, let's check things down, Mark.
The Morning Checkdown on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Colts busy last night. They picked up Mekhi Blackman, a safety from the Minnesota Vikings, in exchange for a 2026 sixth rounder. And they make a bunch of cuts to get down to 53 men by 4 o'clock today, James Boyd.
Yeah, just to clarify, I believe Mekhi Blackman has some safety background, but he's more of a cornerback. And so they're going to try to, I think, wedge him into that cornerback room.
Versatility they like, right?
Yeah, but I think he could probably slot in possibly as like a backup slot cornerback behind Kenny Moore II. But nevertheless, if he's coming in, that means somebody else might be going out. So at 4 o'clock today, we should get more clarity.
All right, Kevin Bowen, any insights on what we might see before the day is done?
Yeah, I mean,
predict the future.
Yeah,
okay, give us some hard answers.
Nostradamus.
Let's go. We'll hold you accountable for it.
He's right so often. That's why I ask him.
1075thefan.com. I guess that's where I would tease some people to head there. Updated the 53-man roster with the Blackman news. Yeah, I ended up moving Chris Labonte to off of it. He is a corner that could do the practice squad elevation thing. You elevate a couple guys in the practice squad each game. It can do that. So you could opt for that. So, again, there's a lot of gymnastics involved with the roster. It will fluctuate a few times a year over the next handful of days. But I don't know, James. Maybe I'm just prisoner of the moment, but I don't recall a cut down that I had this much just kind of shrug of the shoulders. I don't have a lot of, big thoughts in terms of, wow, that was a position that was really hard to cut down. It looks relatively straightforward to me.
I would agree. My biggest thing would just be if there are some players who are going to get designated to go to IR, injured reserve, but also return for the season, who could those players be? One of them, at least that comes to mind for me early on, is possibly Jalen Carlisle, as the linebacker is dealing with a right ankle injury. And I believe the last time I saw him personally, he was in a boot. So could he be someone they automatically put on IR to bring back later in the year?
Pick the Powerball numbers, Kevin. I want those.
How great would that be? I'd be moving to the burbs with you in Brownsburg and that indoor. What is it? Indoor golf.
Indoor golf. Golf bays apparently.
On the high
I have not seen
campus?
these yet. I need a tour. I need to see these things.
IMG Academy over there in Hendricks County.
I live on Kevin's Colts bold predictions. I'm looking forward to
that. There you go.
Look at that.
Indiana Fever play later on
P1
tonight. They are currently in the 8th and final playoff spot. Were the season to end today, of course, it does not end today. They are 19-18. They will host the Seattle Storm later on tonight. 7 o'clock tip over at the Fieldhouse. 6:45 airtime here at 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. And Eddie Garrison will have that. Also, Caitlin Clark being named Nike's newest signature athlete. She's got her own logo. She'll get her own shoe, and eventually, James Boyd, her own clothing line.
Yeah, I can't wait for the sneakers. Just drop the sneakers. I feel like we have all been itching and scratching for them, and yeah, that would be certainly
Didn't
something.
she drop them?
Not her signature sneakers.
No? Okay.
No, those were like the Kobe, player
got
profile,
it.
player
Okay.
exclusive.
Okay.
Rookie of the year, I believe, is what she dropped recently. But yeah, give us the Caitlin Clark exclusive sneakers.
James, would it be disappointing if they missed the playoffs?
It would be. I think so, because just looking back at where the season started with so much expectations on competing for a championship, missing the playoffs entirely would certainly be a big blow. But also, we would understand it. This is not necessarily a scenario where you envision all of your players getting hurt and the main one being Caitlin Clark. But some big ones coming up, and I do think they're still going to fight, scratch, and claw to try to get there, because that's what we've seen from this team all year.
All right, across the hall, Indiana Pacers with a little bit of coaching news yesterday. Kevin Bowen, what's going on there?
Yeah, I think this was kind of the assumption that they would just bump Jim Boylan up to the front of the bench. He's been, I want to say the last 2 years, definitely last year, with the team. Obviously, former NBA head coach. Certainly Mark remembers his days with the Bulls there. Also the Jazz, and was an assistant about a decade ago with the Pacers. Did I miss the joke?
Well, no, a better assistant than he was a head coach in Chicago. There's rumors he had a legit punch card clock.
That's been going on since the Phil Jackson era, though.
He had
ever
it
since
installed
he left,
at the United
right?
Center at their
Gosh,
practice
I remember
facility.
punching my card in
terrible.
at Finish Line Warehouse and Plum Creek back in the
It's
day.
actually been 2 seasons for Boylan, by
two
the way,
seasons
going
here,
to
okay.
year number 3.
So, yeah, he'll be bumped to the front of the bench with Lloyd Pierce, Jenny Busek, and that Mike Weiner news from Friday there. Johnny Carpenter, who the Pacers are adding. He's got some ties. UVA ties to Rick Carlisle's with him in Dallas briefly, also the Pacers a couple years ago during training camp. So they have filled the Mike Weiner news.
All right, Mark, Cubs were off yesterday, but the Dodgers shut out the Reds 7-0. Cardinals.
Well, where are you going to go?
Beat the Pirates. Stop it. Beat the Pirates 7-6. Wilson Contreras got thrown out of that game arguing balls and strikes and threw a bat at one point in time that clipped his own coach instead of just like moving off to the side in frustration.
The Pat Murphy, the potato pancake or whatever it was, pocket pancake that saved his life.
Maybe.
Wait, he hit Pat Murphy with a bat?
It just clipped him as he was kind of
I didn't
discarding
see
it.
that.
He was being held back, and the bat went flying. And the funny thing was, I'm looking at that called strike. It looked like it was a called strike. It looked like it was a strike to me.
Well, I mean, if Williams is anything like his brother Wilson, that doesn't matter. He will argue anything.
All right. What else can we tell you? That's pretty much it. The Indians are back at home tonight, Victory Field. They'll take on the Buffalo Bison at 6:35.
I would say shout out to Terry McLaurin, the local product. He gets a massive extension with the Commanders, 3 years, $96 million. Trey Hendrickson also not too far away over in Cincinnati gets at a raise for his 1 year with Cincinnati. No extra years on his deal, but gets $30 million this year to play it out with the Bengals, who, I think they're going into that season kind of with an all-or-nothing approach, paying their guys and trying to see if they can capture some glory with this 1 year window, I would imagine.
Seems like all eyes turn to Dallas now with Micah Parsons. Are you going to get a deal done, or are you going to sit out, or what's going on there?
Yeah, land on the scorer's table or land on the training table, whatever that was. Probably wasn't the best look, but I understand it because it seems like there has been some just weird negotiations going on, particularly on the part of Jerry Jones. Yes, Jerry, you have to talk to the agent. Like, legally, you should do that.
I don't have the patience to jack with you today.
I kind of feel like ESPN talk shows in the morning desperately need that to go on for at least another week till we get
Oh,
close
yeah,
to the
we're
regular
in the
season.
doldrums now, so aside from cut day, they need some content, so Jerry Jones would be happy to oblige.
All right, coming up in just a moment, we will hear some of the words that Shane Steichen had to say yesterday about the situation with the Indianapolis Colts, their quarterback, and everything moving forward. We'll do that as we continue. 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
We get to suck on that all week.
93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Happy Tuesday morning and welcome into our little round table today as we get ready for the Indianapolis Colts to make some decisions. 4 o'clock is when they are due. NFL cut-down day. We've been talking about that all day long, but also been talking about Shane Steichen and how things have been handled, quarterback position, and some of the things he had to say at his press conference yesterday, Kevin Bowen.
Yeah, he, James, I guess we hadn't really gotten maybe too deep into Stephen Holder, honestly, had the report on this last week about Anthony Richardson, and I forget the exact phrasing. Maybe we have a lot to think about. I think is what his agent said, Derek Jackson.
Yeah, he used the word trust.
Yeah, trust had been.
Trust is questionable right now
with the organization. So I just asked Shane something to the effect of, "Hey, has Anthony come to you in any conversations with doubts about where he is at right now, current standing within the franchise, things like that?" This was Shane Steichen's response to that yesterday afternoon.
I've had conversations with him. Obviously, he's our backup quarterback right now and still attacking it the right way, coming in, being a pro, getting in here early, taking care of his body, rehab treatment, and then in the QB room, preparing like you're the starter. I think we got a great QB room with really bright minds in there, and everyone kind of ping-pongs off each other. And then on the practice field, making sure he's working on his fundamentals and details, running the scout team, making sure that's on point and getting better there. And then obviously when meetings are over, making sure we're watching cut-ups, third down, red zone, all those things throughout the week, knowing that, he's one play away from playing.
Jeff, I think that was the first time you had heard that. I guess
I was on a plane
I'll go to you first. Your thoughts upon hearing that the first time.
All the stuff that goes on with your number 4 overall pick from a couple of years ago in his own psyche when he is the starter. Then he's not the starter. Then he pulls himself out of the game, and then he's the starter again. And then they bring in Daniel Jones, and now he's not the starter again. At some point in time, you can keep saying from your perspective as the Colts, hey, he's still our number 4 guy. He just needs more time to develop, and he's one play away, and that's all good. But at a certain point, how does Anthony Richardson feel about himself as a quarterback and how he feels the Colts view him at some point in time? Like, that all plays into it at some point, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think you hit the, nail on the head right there, because that is what the money question is, in my opinion, for Chris Ballard tomorrow. What is your plan? Your plan right now is to win with Daniel Jones, and I can understand why you would make that pivot. I'm not here to say that Anthony Richardson has been a good quarterback in the NFL. He's been a bad quarterback largely in the NFL. So the idea that you want to pivot away from that makes sense. However, that decision is not made in a vacuum. There are still other implications of that. And so if you pivot off of him for a second time, one, how do you sell him on whatever plan you're giving him? And then two, what is the plan? I mean, why does I go back to how it was when he got benched the first time, Kevin, and he could just never, and this is Shane I'm talking about when I reference he could never explain whatever process Anthony Richardson is going through. He just says process like we're supposed to believe in some vague term. And I get that, yeah, it involves film study and, coming in early and watching cut-ups, but like all that stuff we already know. So what tangibly specific to Anthony Richardson is different about whatever process he's going through? Because what he's given us is answers that I could tell you, I'm not in that room every day. I don't know anything about being a quarterback's coach or being a head coach. So what insight can you give us that isn't just some, rudimentary stuff that we can Google, if that makes sense?
What you hope is that Anthony Richardson is just mentally strong enough to say, look, I don't know what the Colts really think about me. They keep jerking me around here from his perspective. All I know is at some point in time, Daniel Jones will probably miss some time, whether it's a quarter, whether it's 2 games, something along those lines. That's how the NFL works these days. All he can do is say to himself, you know what, I don't know what my future is with the Colts. I don't even know if I want to be here. I don't even know if I'm their guy. All I know is that when I have my next chance, I'm going to prove to somebody out there who wants to love me that I can play quarterback in the National Football League. That's what you hope happens.
Yeah, in a way, he kind of did that last year briefly. Obviously, when he got benched and he came back, the first game back, he had the best game of his career in that dramatic win over the Jets. And I believe that might have been, in my opinion, the most complete performance for Anthony outside of a few moments here or there in other games. But it's also a huge gamble in a way because Anthony is so up and down throughout his career that you can't bank on him proving to anybody that he can be an NFL starting quarterback right now. So there's certainly a lot to unpack there, and I look forward to talking to Chris Ballard tomorrow more about this. It's funny because, again, he meets with us about or at least the thought is you meet right after the cut down day to talk about the roster, but I guarantee you if we get Chris Ballard for 30 minutes, 28 of those minutes are going to be by Anthony Richardson.
You think that answer is just a nothing burger from Shane Steichen?
A lot of people on the text line do. Yelling at clouds.
Initially, in the moment, I thought yes, but honestly, I think he was kind of getting at all the things that he wants him to do. And, I thought that was a little bit more than what he's given in the past. And maybe I'm just like desperate for something, but, watching the red zone cut-ups and, staying later, getting there early, I think these are all things that he's probably thinking.
So he's mentioning that because Anthony was not doing them? Is that what you're inferring?
Not necessarily. I think what I'm inferring is that, okay, he's doing them now. Maybe, I don't know. When I say not, I don't know if he's not been doing them as of late. But perhaps this wasn't the case last year or going into the season, whatever the case may be. But now that he is doing them, he just wants to see more of that. That's kind of where I'm at. But again, I have to speculate because we haven't been given any clarity. And then to give some grace to Shane, whenever we have kind of asked, and I have done this one-on-one with Anthony Richardson, what could you tangibly have done different last year? Or what have you tangibly done different this year? There's not a clear answer there either on his side. He's just like, well, I got to do more. What does that mean? Come on, can anybody in this organization just give real answers? More, what does that mean? It's like the Kobe Bryant commercial with Kanye West a few years ago. What do you need from me? Mama mentality. More. More means what? Explain that.
Yeah,
that ad probably aged well, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll steer clear of the Kanye West conversation.
I know.
But yes, not aged very well, Mark.
We got this text line, and honestly, I had this tweet probably a handful of times yesterday of Shane listening to Steichen's like listening to Charlie Brown's teacher. Like, we mentioned this about an hour ago. I don't know if I've seen the fan base this fed up with Steichen. And, right now you're in a very much of a, hey, you just evaluate him off of public settings because, you don't play games until a week from Sunday. And, that's when the truer evaluation is going to be. But it just seems like there is a growing level of frustration largely based off the public comments from Steichen. And again, I have said this for any coach because obviously coaches handle the media very, very differently. Darren DeVries versus Kurt Cignetti, but those are two different people
Yeah.
when it comes to a media standpoint here. Rick Carlisle to Shane Steichen, two very different people when it comes to the media. And my question has always been, what is happening behind the scenes? And when Shane last year expressed regret and how he handled some of that stuff and the messaging not necessarily getting through to the players and the standard that he wants out of his operation not being met, that's when it becomes a big issue. And so I think it is fair to question that from Shane Steichen right now, in that he regretted it last season, and then you have Anthony Richardson's own team being frustrated by some of the public messaging around him. And I'm not maybe speaking to the answer we just heard right there, but the lack of transparency in front of a closed door is one thing. The lack of transparency behind a closed door when it's not resonating with your team is also a question. And right now, do the Colts have a head coach, or do they have an offensive coordinator as head coach?
That's the teacher talking in Charlie Brown.
Like, do they have a head coach / leader of men, or do they have an offensive coordinator who has head coach duties?
Or do they have Charlie Brown's teacher, as Mark was alluding to?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is the money question.
Football robot.
As well. Another money question.
Because I think
Kevin.
you have to strike such a balance of like, and again, this gets into the head coaching debate. Do you hire a guy that's going to delegate? Dan Campbell, Mike Tomlin, John Harbaugh?
Yeah.
Or are you going to hire someone that's going to be super hands-on, mostly offensively? Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, Andy Reid. You can find different sides of it that have had great success in today's
absolutely.
NFL. Shane Steichen is more of the offensive side of it.
But the other guys you mentioned on that list, though, are pretty good leaders of men, too.
Sure. But, they were initially hired more for that offensive background. I mean, that's why Shane was hired.
Yeah.
If Shane Steichen had the exact same resume as a defensive guy, he would not have been the hire here. No chance. He was hired because you couldn't figure out quarterback for years, and they wanted to hire a guy that'll work with Jalen Hurts and Justin Herbert and Phillip Rivers. And right now, 2.5 years into it, the quarterback position still has the same questions it did 2.5 years ago when you hired him. That's not good.
All right, coming up in a moment, we will finish up with some final thoughts, get ready for cut down day, look ahead to what is on tap for everybody this evening here on a Tuesday. It's 93.5 or 107.5 The Fan.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on Sports Radio 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Getting ready to wrap it up here on this Tuesday morning. The Indiana Fever will play tonight against the Seattle Storm. That one comes your way at 7 o'clock. You can hear it live beginning at 6:45 here at 93.5, 107.5 The Fan on our fan pregame show with Eddie Garrison. Before we get out of here, too, let's check the phone lines one more time, 239-1070. Good Jimmy being patient through the break. Appreciate that, Jimmy. You are on the air.
Good morning, Jeff. Good morning, KB. Good morning, JB. And last but not least, good morning, Mark. How are you guys?
Doing well. Good to hear from you. What's up?
Hey, two things real quick. One, this is directed directly at my friend Kevin Bowen. Go Canes, beat the Irish.
Whoa! Hey now.
Those are fighting words.
Hey, Jimmy.
Kevin just said we thought it was good, Jimmy.
Jimmy, I might be smashing your mailbox in if you keep this up, young man. You don't go there on me. I cannot wait. Boy, I'm gonna. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Hey, I wrote that.
We'll hear that a few times.
All right, Jimmy, where were you going with this? There's no way you were calling just for the dig, right?
No. I did have a respectful thing to say about the Irish. I want to say that your two-headed monster at running back gives me nightmares. So,
there we go.
I'm pulling for my Canes, but if you're Irish win, I will be a good friend and congratulate you. So there's that. But also, I just wanted to make a comment on the Colts real quick, guys. Everyone is throwing dirt and writing the obituary on Anthony Richardson, and I feel like as long as he could, stay with it mentally, I think that's going to be the hardest thing for him. And I wish him the best. I just want the Colts to do well. As you guys know, I was at training camp a lot this season, and it was a lot of fun. And that's all I got. You guys have a great morning. Great to talk to you. Thanks.
All right. Appreciate that. Always good to hear from good Jimmy, especially when he's taking shots early in the morning to any of us.
And Mark Dykton could learn a thing or two from Jimmy on how to handle sports respect out there.
This is actually
Sorry, I couldn't hear you over that awesome song.
With that song playing.
Jimmy, always great to hear your voice. If you want to live in a Richardson world, James Boyd, and you grab the cup that's super half full, probably his best stretch of his as a pro came after he got benched last year.
I think it's probably out of it. It was absolutely his best stretch in my opinion.
His best stretch as a pro came after he got benched.
And that's what good Jimmy is kind of alluding to is, hey, don't write him off
If and
just
when
yet.
with Daniel Jones. I mean, really, it was the back injury that took him off the field last year, late in the season. The Denver game was definitely not good, but, New England, the Jets, big-time moments on the road, delivering for your football team when you had, before you got to the Denver game, you had to get there with those other wins. So, again, it's probably reaching for a little bit glass half full, but I believe Anthony Richardson will get one more shot at it.
I do think, again, if they start off like 0-2, 0-3, 1-2, 1-3, it could get very loud for the Anthony Richardson getting back in there.
You think he'd pull the plug that quickly? You think Shane would bail that early?
If they started 1-3, yes. Maybe not 1-2, but if they're 2 games under 500 through 4 games or a month in the season, yes.
Look up the Joe Flacco quote where they said they're going to ride with Joe Flacco the rest of the season, and then how long was it? 3 weeks, and they went back to
2 weeks, 14 days.
Yeah.
I think the leash will be longer for Jones than it was for Flacco.
That's fair.
Yeah. Gary in Noblesville
17 days.
says, any chance you guys can say hi to my son Ashton? He's homesick from school. We're watching you on YouTube. Ashton, how you doing, man?
Ashton, hope you're feeling better, man.
Yeah, Ashton, hope you feel better. And shout out to your parents for letting you stay home from school because you're sick. Because my parents never let me stay home when I was sick because in their mind, kids didn't get sick. They just got sick of going to school. And you were going to go, James, is what they told me.
Fever of 102. Get up and get going,
I know,
man.
but shout out to Ashton, man. Hoping you're having a good day, buddy.
Feel better.
Thank
Get that
you,
chicken
Gary.
soup.
Is that Gary Deacon from Noblesville? Love me some
Right.
Gary Deacon if it is. And this from Brant, big ol' accident, I-69 South. I feel like that's an annual day thing, but 69 shut down between Hamilton Town Center and 116th. That's a big ol' shutdown if indeed. So Fishers area, northeast side of town, will watch out.
Stay away. DJ in Indy speaks for the frustration of many, many texters and fans today when he talks about that it's just time to let go. He's tired of what he perceives the arrogant attitude of Chris Ballard, dumpster fire after dumpster fire. It's just time to let go and move on, he says.
We'll see. We'll certainly get some answers after this season. They have one more year together at least, and they have betted on Daniel Jones. And so we will see how much that bet cashes in.
I think the leash will be long for Daniel Jones when it comes to Shane Steichen. I think the leash is short when it comes to fans' patience this year. I think we're at the wit's end for the Colts fans. Like, enough is enough.
There ain't no leash left.
The second this gets ugly, we are booing. We are not showing up. We are going to voice our frustrations.
The kid at the mall has broken the leash. He's on the loose. That's exactly where Colts fans are at right now.
He's heading towards the candy store.
With Shane Steichen.
If they come out of the gate and beat Miami and Denver, now what are we talking about?
You carry Daniel Jones back to his beautiful state.
Looking like Rudy.
You build the statue.
Yeah. You might take Peyton's statue down like it's one of those dictators overseas, and then you build Daniel Jones's.
Somebody will throw his jersey on the Peyton Manning statue over there at Lucas Oil. We'd be good to go after 2 games.
I mean, you got a great gift in week 1. You see Miami's kickers out for a month plus, too? I mean, like, there are so many things in your corner for week 1. Their secondary obviously has had major questions. So, I mean, hell, the Colts are favored in week 1.
What if they go 2-1 in the first 3?
Again, that's better than what they've done in the past.
Aren't they? They'll probably be favored, right? In 2 of those first 3. I'm looking at the schedule next to James. I mean, aren't you going to be favored at Tennessee?
You'd think so.
Yeah, I would think so.
Don't think a rookie quarterback's going to be doing that. So,
all right. Great job again spinning the tunes this morning, Mark Dykton.
Thank you.
A little upset with your consistent attacks on Kevin and the Reds all the time and Notre Dame.
He asked for the audio. It wasn't me.
All right. Jay Query comes your way at noon with very latest from the Colts. JMV, of course, will be on the air live when NFL cut day deadline comes at 4. We'll be here all day on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.